The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, let's do this, shall we? Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner back here today. I kicked Reed out. No more Reed. That is what my goal was when I took over the show, was no more Reed, and I accomplished that. Thank goodness. Jacob, how are you? Good morning.
I'm great. I'm glad you're back. I don't think the chat feels the same way. They were pretty excited yesterday to see you not in that chair.
You know, I thrive when I know that I am disliked by people. I seem to thrive in that situation.
That's good. That's good.
I think if we put out like a top media list, I would probably come in at number 39, I think. That's how,
oh, no.
That's how bad I am.
Well, it'd probably be a pretty bad list.
Yeah, pretty bad. But yeah, no more Reed. It's a good day. No more Reed.
Yeah, no. So they don't think you're a good host. I'm not going to say that, but you're not very good about kicking people off the show either. I'll get there.
Why do you say that? Oh, we got Reed.
Hey, everyone. Hey, it's nice to be back here. I had fun yesterday hosting the show in your stead. I think that the chat just wants me to be full-time. I don't know.
I can't hear you. You're way over there in the producer chat. I can't hear you, dude. You have to speak up. But no, Reed, welcome. Good morning. And then we got Jimmy. Jimmy, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm great. I'm happy with the chat. Reed said in the chat that if we got 25 likes before the stream started that he would kick me off, and we didn't. So thank you guys.
I've been a little vindictive today. I've been a little vindictive since yesterday. I don't handle the losses very well. I was lashing out on Twitter, X.com, and now I'm lashing out on just my kind friend.
You were lashing out in our group chat.
I did. Just it was funny because it's like the seventh. It was right after TJ Friedel hit the 3-run home run. The chat hasn't been texting for 3 hours, and I just sent an F you guys, and and I realized like 10 minutes go by, and I was like, that was pretty aggressive. So I sit back and LOL,
and that made me laugh.
I guess I'm glad that my team didn't lose to the Reds because
I
would have felt it.
Is that what we're doing?
It was a month ago, man.
How you like Jack Flaherty, Tarek Skubal? How you like them on the Tigers? Because
they're good so far.
Spoiler alert.
They've had 2 great years.
You won't have them for the rest of the year.
Or day, maybe. Or day. But I do love – I don't know why, Jimmy, when you bring up that sweep over the Reds, it just – I get a good kick out of that. Lean into that.
Every once in a while.
But you don't do it every once in a while. You do it every day.
That's what I like.
I didn't do it yesterday, did I?
You have to ask.
It was my show yesterday, so that's I kept them in check.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Jimmy, you're unleashed today. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say, it's all up to you. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to do my best to fight
Game day
through.
says you got trashed last night. Is that why?
Is that what it is? I'm hungover every show. But yeah, I got
eyes
my
look
day
glossy.
No, so we're going to talk about trade deadline coming up. A lot of moves made yesterday. The deadline coming up later on tonight. The Reds made a couple moves that we'll discuss coming up here shortly. Cincinnati Bengals, they show the renovations to their new locker room. That was released earlier this morning. We have a video of that coming up here around the corner, as well as some more updates from Bengals camp. The NFL Top 100 list that NFL players all vote upon and put this list together. Look, I'm a Bengals hater, as you all know, and even I'm sitting here scratching my head as far as where Joe Burrow ended up on this list. It's kind of laughable. We'll talk about that coming up around the corner. New NFL kickoff rules have a lot of people talking about how silly these new rules are. We'll get to all of that coming up here on today's show. Again, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We welcome you in. So, all right, so the MLB trade deadline obviously coming up later on tonight. And, Jacob, we do have a special program on Chatterbox later on today, correct, with Nick Kirby?
That's right. Kirby's going to be live from 2 to 6, reacting to all the trade deadline stuff, everything live on our YouTube. So make sure to tune into that.
Kirby from 2 to 6?
Yeah, that's
like
what
that.
He said.
I like that. Good for him.
That's about 3 hours and 59 minutes of too much Kirby.
He also
I
said
didn't say that, Nick. We're good, right? I mean, I know how Reed could be. I tried to get rid of him, dude.
10:05, dude.
Listen, I don't handle the losses well, so I'm lashing out.
But a couple trades to talk about when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds, of course. We were talking before, and, you two jumped on my case. Obviously, when I talked about the Reds making a big move, to me a big move is acquiring a big name, not moving on from a name that, of course, they spend a decent chunk of change on this past offseason, was their opening day starter. And, of course, when you talk about making a big move, I always look at it as, is it a big move? Because you got to look at what they get in return. The Reds move on from Frankie Montas, of course, and they make a couple moves yesterday ahead of the deadline, of course, coming up later on today. But we'll start with Jacob. Frankie Montas, the Reds move on from him, their opening day starter, obviously. I think I would feel more of a certain way about this if he actually looked like a really good pitcher coming out of the All-Star break. I think he made it kind of easy, and I do think at the same time, I think he kind of hurt his value a little bit. I don't think the Reds got the true return that they could have potentially got had he looked good coming out of the break. But regardless, not only do they move on from Frankie Montas, but they send him to a division rival. They sent him to the division-leading Milwaukee Brewers. A lot to unpack here. Frankie Montas no longer a Cincinnati Red.
Yeah, certainly a little bit interesting that it was an in-division trade. You don't see those very often, especially from Nick Krall. So it was nice to see that because it was honestly a really good return for a pitcher who's had a 5 ERA this year. Joey Wiemer had a really good year last year in the majors. He had a positive WAR, and then this year he struggled but had dominated in high minor leagues. So baseball trade values, obviously that's, take it for what you will, but the Reds came out on top massively in their metrics for this trade. So, I mean, Montas with an ERA over 5, it's not like you're going to get some kind of massive return for him, but I think we got 2 guys who are going to help the Reds this year and next. I mean, Wiemer has team control, and then Eunice, the reliever, has a mutual option for next year. So potentially 2 guys that can help the team next year as well. I think both will certainly contribute for the Reds this season, more than Montas would have every 5th day for a team that's not in the playoff race.
Reed, do you like the return? I know you're not a Reds guy, but do you?
Yeah.
So one thing I like that Trace and Nick had talked about in the past on Chatterbox Reds was, okay, obviously you're going to make moves at the deadline. You're going to move on from pieces. But at the same time, you don't just move on from pieces to move on from pieces. If you can get a nice return on something, you do it. But if you're not going to get a solid return on something, you may as well keep your roster loaded with some guys to at least give your team a fighting chance in the back end of the season. Did what the Reds get back in return for Frankie Montas, was that enough to say, okay, we're going to move on without one of our starters? Was that enough of a return that you think justified this move, I guess?
Yeah, certainly. No, listen, I said on the show yesterday, and it kind of mirrored. I didn't see that Kirby said this, but it's a pretty it wasn't breaking new ground when I said this on the show yesterday, but every move that the Reds were going to make or should make, they should ask themselves one question, and that is, does this make us better next year? Does this make us better the year after that? I wasn't in favor of, acquiring pieces that help in 2027. That seems too far, and it seems like you're closing out on the Ellie De La Cruz Hunter Greene window, although with his extension, Hunter Greene's extension, that's extended. But these pieces make the Reds better for 2025. There was already kind of a backlog. You can't have too much starting pitching, but the Reds were treading that line of, hey, we've got a lot of guys that kind of perform similarly to Frankie Montas. So you have a bunch of pieces that can fill in. Now you help with Joey Wiemer, and I know his bat hasn't been there in Major League Baseball, but what's the one thing that the Reds pretty evidently need, and that's some defensive help out in the outfield? And that's what they got. They got a guy who played here in Cincinnati, that he's very accustomed to this area, and now he's one of the best outfielders in Major League Baseball. So you get that, and there's also a positive upside with his bat. It hasn't shown it yet, but there is some things to be excited about, some pop and some other things. And then Jacob Junis, talk about another arm that just can eat up a lot of innings and high quality innings at that. So yeah, it's a really good return for. And
the Reds were interested in Junis this offseason before he signed with the Brewers. So getting a guy that you thought would be good in the bullpen for the rest of the year. So
it's another one of those flex arms that they are so high on. The Nick Martinez's, the Carson Spires that kind of do multiple things. Can they throw 4 innings for you? Yes. Can they come in and shut down for an 8 inning? Yes. That's what you want. You want to have flexible pieces, and that's what they got.
Yeah, like as far as I'm concerned, like the Reds have not looked good enough coming out of the break for me to have a strong take about they should not have done this. I just think that this team is who they are. They're a fringe 500 team. They're going to flirt with it for the rest of the season. I don't think they're a playoff team. I do understand the frustration from some fans saying, hey, they should have kept him, at least give him a chance in the back end. Some don't like the return. That's why I was kind of asking your guys' opinions on that. Was that return worth it? But at the same time, the Reds they haven't played well enough for me to sit here and say they should not have moved on from him. You may as well get something, because if this team ultimately misses the playoffs, which it seems like it's going to lean that way, they miss the playoffs and then you don't capitalize on at least getting something in return, which they did. You could be kicking yourself later. So I don't mind the move. And I know Jimmy, you're keeping an eye on what your team's doing with moving on from starting pitching. Obviously, a much better pitcher than what the Reds moved on from. But
two of them.
Oh, two. Didn't they help the Tigers beat the Reds this season?
One of them did.
That's what they're saying on the streets. Just
yeah,
saying.
I really liked the move. I think this trade deadline market has been the price to get guys has been very high. In pitching, at least, I think there are a lot of really good pitchers on the board, and Frankie Montas, who hasn't had a great year, he's had good years in the MLB, I think, but this year obviously wasn't great. He had a 5 ERA, like Jacob said, and I think the Reds took advantage of that. They were able to get a good outfielder who is very sound defensively. I believe 8 outs above average, and the Reds, as we know, need outfielders because seems to keep getting hurt, and then a bullpen arm he's had a good year. And as we kind of talked a little bit about yesterday, they could be moving on from 1 or 2 of those guys in that bullpen today. It wouldn't be surprising at all. So you're kind of getting a guy to fill in for those guys and an outfielder to boost the play in the outfield, something that you've kind of really needed all season. I think it's good. I think this is a seller's market right now, and I do really like the return, and I think that the Reds are able to take advantage of getting rid of a guy who wouldn't necessarily be a high price in years past for a pretty high price.
One thing we touched on, the Reds did make another move. They add another infielder, which could that be an indication of moving on from a particular infielder that a lot of Reds fans have been keeping an eye on? We'll talk about that in a moment. You lightly touched on it. Trending to a division rival, you don't see it too often. Obviously, you have to probably look. I don't know what kind of offers the Reds were getting for Frankie Montas. You obviously go with the best one. I would like to think you don't want to move on for pieces within your own division, but at the same time, you got to take what the best offer was. Do you like moving on from guys within your own division, or is that just something that like fans like to kind of harp on, but really probably isn't something the front office keeps an eye on? Where are you with that?
Yeah, I really personally don't care. I would hope the front office doesn't really think about that. I think you're just taking the best offer, especially in a year where the Brewers seem to already have the division on lock, and the Reds are not really competing for the Central, and Montas has a mutual option next year that, barring an incredible second half, the Brewers are definitely not going to pick up. So it's a couple-month rental to your division, then he's probably going to go somewhere else next year. So I really don't think about it. If there was a lot of team control or it was a much better player than a Frankie Montas, I think it'd be a little bit bigger of an issue for me. But, yeah, in this instance, it really didn't bother me at all.
All right, the Cincinnati Reds also acquired infielder Ty France in cash considerations from the Seattle Mariners in exchange for minor league catcher Andrew Salcedo. So you get Ty France. I know, whatever, not a big name. But is this addition to adding depth to the infield, is this an indication, in your opinion, that we think that the Cincinnati Reds could potentially be moving on from Jonathan India by the 6 p.m. trade deadline coming up later on this evening? Is this an indication of that, or is this just, again, just trying to capitalize and just acquire some new pieces at this deadline for the rest of 2024 and beyond? Is this a depth piece, do you think, that we could potentially look into and say, oh, yeah, they're probably moving on from Jonathan India? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think Ty France has any bearing on India's future with the Reds. I think it was just a guy who's going to play first base. Now you're going to be able to play Candelario more where you envisioned him playing. Steer's going to get more reps in the outfield, which is where he's going to play in the next couple of years, where the Reds are really trying to compete. So I think it's more just a move to get people in the positions that they're going to play in the future. And I wouldn't expect Ty France to burn the world down, but he was an all-star a couple of years ago. He's had some good years in Seattle, and team control next year as well. So I think it's just an interesting move to try to catch a guy with a little bit of upside going into, a season where you're not really going to buy a whole lot, but it's a way to add a little bit of potential talent to the roster.
I see a lot of Ty France betting 220. We may never lose again. Who said that? Was Mark Fetters, I believe. Yep, he jumping in. We may never lose again as far as that's concerned. Jonathan India, obviously a name we'll be keeping an eye on for the remainder of the day. Again, the Chatterbox Reds trade deadline special with Nick Kirby coming up 2 to 6 p.m. right here at Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. So looking forward to that because he'll be able to speak way more eloquently on the Reds and their decisions at this deadline. And really, I'm sure he's not just talking 4 hours of the Reds at the deadline. A lot of moves that will impact the Reds teams within the division, including your Chicago Cubs. Reed, you like what the Cubs have done? I mean, they add an all-star. I mean, what do you think about the addition they made at this trade deadline thus far?
Yeah, so when the news first broke and you get the push notification, or you're on X.com and you see the Reds or the Cubs get Paredes, you're like, what in the world is going on? Why are we buying? And then you just realize it's pretty much a swap for Christopher Morel for Isaac Paredes, and it's a known quantity for an unknown quantity. That's all it was. I mean, you throw 2 not even top 30 prospects in on the mix. The Rays are just trying to buy low on Christopher Morel, a guy that truly could be a 40 home run power threat. But he hasn't figured it out in the field, and he hasn't been able to consistently put the bat on the ball. So I think the Cubs were just kind of done. I think they're just like done waiting for this to pan out. So they go and get a known quantity in Paredes. I like that move. I think there's going to be some more trades today with the Cubs, like Talion, who threw yesterday. He had a sub-3 ERA going into yesterday. Obviously that ballooned, but he's a name that's been thrown around a lot. The one name that was thrown around early on in this month, when the Cubs had first kind of talked about, hey, we're going to be sellers, we're gonna sell some pieces, was Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger got hurt, broke his hand, and had been sitting on the IL for now the last 2.5, 3 weeks. He was activated yesterday, so now you can trade him. I think that's really interesting to see what happens there. Then some other pieces like Nico Horner, who I think can help a lot of teams. It's just going to be interesting because yesterday's lineup might not be what you see today. And that's just where we're at. But very quickly, you didn't ask me about the Ty France deal. Those are the kind of deals that the Reds are going to have to make, to where this guy's getting DFA'd. He was a free agent or an all-star 2 years ago. He is trending tremendously downward. Can a change of scenery and you give up nothing for just giving a guy another chance? I don't hate that move at all. It's kind of the move that they've done 2 other times this year. They did it with Austin Slater. They did it with Santiago Espinal. Like they are just giving guys opportunities for pretty much no risk. There's no risk with getting a guy like Ty France. Why not see if he can get back to where he was 2 years ago?
Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. A couple names, former Cincinnati Reds that went on the move yesterday already. Jesse Winker, making his all-MLB tour. Continuing with that, he was traded to the Mets. So Jesse Winker now a Met. And then Michael Lorenzen, former Red, was traded to the Kansas City Royals from the Texas Rangers. So a couple interesting names to keep an eye on at the deadline as far as those 2 have already been moved. But Jesse Winker to the Mets, Michael Lorenzen to the Kansas City Royals. 2 interesting moves right there. All right. Again, Chatterbox Reds trade deadline special with Nick Kirby coming up 2 to 6 later on this afternoon on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. All right, let's transition to some Cincinnati Bengals talk. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, they released the video package of their new renovated locker rooms. They had a lot of people talking. I know Willie Anderson, who we're going to have on the show here soon, had a lot of people talking. He tweeted out that he had to sit on something, and people thought it had something to do with money, and everyone thought that he was sitting on something about Jamar Chase or something like that. But no, it was about the renovated locker rooms. A lot of people excited about that. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow making their little tour of the new locker room. We'll have that video coming up for you around the corner, plus the NFL Top 100 list. Joe Burrow, and this is coming from a guy that's not a Bengals fan, Joe Burrow, he's wrongly placed on this list. He should be significantly higher. If you're not familiar with where he is, we'll talk about that next. More Bengals talk coming up next, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, Ohio. Okay, welcome back. We got Jimmy, we got Reed, we got Jacob, and yes, I'm back, unfortunately, for some of you. Justin Kinner with you here again, 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Transitioning to a little Cincinnati Bengals talk. The Cincinnati Bengals earlier this morning released the video and some pictures of their newly renovated locker rooms, and we have that queued up for you here. For those of you who are hanging out with us on the YouTube side, take a look.
Nice right here.
You're back, Kenner.
Oh, my apologies. Welcome back. Off the bench. Again, there you had a chance to see the renovated locker rooms, of course, and I know people were very excited to kind of see what that finished product was going to be. Jacob, I know you were super excited about that kind of coming in today. Now, some people may ask, you guys remember that survey that comes out in the offseason? A lot of players, a lot of teams just come back and get horrible grades. Even the Kansas City Chiefs get bad grades on a lot of things. So when the Bengals get bad grades on stuff, it's not like, oh, it's a typical Bengals organization. No, even the best organizations in football get these bad grades because they're player evaluations. And to me, I don't judge the franchises based on the grades that they get from the players. I judge franchises who based on what they do with that information. And I do think that this is actually something really cool that they do because, for one, in sports talk, it gives us content to talk about during the downtime of the summer, of course. But what it also does is it gives these franchises opportunities to kind of get an idea of what exactly these players are feeling, thinking, and looking for, not just your current players, but even when you're hitting the free agent market, as far as how that's going to impact the perception of your team. The Cincinnati Bengals, they've checked off a lot of boxes, whether it's directly from those, forms or not. They have made it a point over the last couple of years, not just to update the product on the field, but the field itself, the stadium. Jacob, the Bengals continue to check off more boxes.
Yeah, my defense of ownership basically across all sports with all teams is they'll invest when there's time to invest. And certainly you'd like your owner to invest to a point where you get competitive and then you're good right away. But in the NFL, Joe Burrow fell into our lap. And as soon as the Bengals became competitive, Mike Brown decided it was time to spend. And that wasn't only on the team, on the field. The most expensive Bengals offseasons of all time have been in the last couple of years with Joe Burrow at the helm. But they've also put $100 million into Paycor this season for renovations. They have the practice bubble that's popped up over the last couple of years. And then now the locker room this year, one of the nicest locker rooms in the NFL. It looks like a college locker room. Everett pointed that out in the chat that NFL teams are finally catching up with the rest of college, which was the take I had before the show started as well. So, yeah, it's nice to see the Bengals looking like a professional team. There was a lot of time there where the Bengals were the laughing stock of the league. It gets cold outside in Cincinnati, and they go practice at a non-Power 5 college campus. So, it's nice to have their own facilities and be top of the line. Hopefully that'll be reflected in the survey next year. It's been a lot of Fs for the Bengals over the last couple of years, so hopefully that trends up. But as long as they keep acting on those reviews and keep getting better optically, I'm really impressed with how this team's been going.
Real quick, you think Mike Brown's kicking himself because now Cincinnati, they are Power 5. Now you could have been practicing at a Power 5 field as far as that's concerned.
Probably.
But no, Reed, obviously, look, because a lot of people say, well, fans, why do, and I've been like this in the past. I'm like, I don't really care about my team's facilities. It doesn't impact me, but it kind of does because the perception of your franchise dictates what kind of players go to your franchise, this, that, the other. Obviously, how people can find a bad talking point in this, it's only a good thing is the Bengals not just continue to invest in their roster, but invest, in the product itself.
Yeah, ever since we've kind of been in this renaissance, I'll call it a renaissance of the Cincinnati Bengals, to where we're trying to shed that previous notion that this team is cheap, and it's a complete renovation almost, to where it's going to take time, it's going to take years, it doesn't happen in one off season, and that's what they're doing. They're picking piece by piece. The locker room looks fantastic. Does Jamar Chase want a fridge now by his locker? Because that's what it looked like. Is that what the contract hold up is all about? He just wants a fridge near his locker. Listen, it's fantastic. I used to take pride in the Bengals practicing outside. I used to say we're tougher than the rest of the teams in the league because we practice outside. Now that's gone away. But no, these are good things. These are good things to where, hey, we're treating our employees with excellent facilities. And yeah, we'll see how the grades are. I don't put too much stock into how the grades are, the player grades that they give, because the Bengals always finished last or near last, and the team right above them is the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. So I'm not too worried about player grades, but it's objectively a good thing to improve on the facilities.
Jimmy, Jacob, do you guys put what stock? And again, I wasn't here back when those grades came out, but like obviously, do you guys put stock into those?
I would like them to be better.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, I don't really care.
Not losing
if we
sleep.
fail, as long as we win games in the season. I don't really care.
Right.
Speaking of grades, how did this guy do on your test?
I did
last
well.
Friday?
Grades
There we
come out
go.
Thursday, so we'll
Nice,
see. We'll
dude.
see then. But I'm feeling good.
Brainiac over here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the grades are poor and the team's losing, then there's an issue. But if the grades are poor and the team is winning, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Like Reed's point with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right,
we could-
exactly.
No one's freaking out in Kansas City about,
Right.
I don't care about the Fs. I don't care about the bad grades. We're back-to-back Super Bowl champs, right? Like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously that locker room is very nice. I think it looked like that's one of the nicer ones I've seen in the NFL. So I think it's exciting. I think it's kind of the organization is treating them the way they should be treated, because they are a very good football team and they have very good players, and they
Thanks
should.
for saying that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'll also say.
Thanks.
Is that
Your turn.
we done?
I love it.
We
I
done?
freaking love it. That was
It's
awesome.
all you.
He's like, I guess.
Go ahead.
I was just thankful
No, I'm
that you
joking.
said that they're a good football team.
I'm joking.
Here's the thing I'll say about the Bengals is we talk about how they need to be treated well and stuff like that. You know what the players want more than anything is to get paid right, to get paid well. And the Cincinnati Bengals have almost always done that. They've always paid their players well. Carson Palmer got paid, Chad Johnson got paid, AJ Green, Andy Dalton. They're all getting paid. Jamar Chase will get paid. So we can get excited about the locker rooms all we want. At the end of the day, these players are treated well here by this city.
All right, and speaking of that too, I know Jacob and I were talking before the show. You weren't here, Friday, when
Correct.
initially the talking point of Jamar sitting out really took off. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I know you guys talked about the Bengals yesterday, but again, has yet to step foot. Well, that's not true. He stepped foot out on the practice field, but he's yet to participate in training camp thus far. And me and you were talking before, obviously, we could sit here and look at the end goal and say, well, the end goal, he's going to get paid. We don't have to worry about it. Absolutely. But as more and more days of camp continue to roll along, as more and more days continue to go while this team is out preparing for this upcoming season, you could talk about the chemistry between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase all we want. We could talk about all of those things. But at the end of the day, you'll never convince me that not having one of your star players who's healthy out on the field getting prepared for the upcoming season, you can't convince me that that's a good thing. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but I'm fascinated by where this goes, because we had Jay Morrison on last week. I asked him, okay, basically point blank, like, who's going to – it's a staring contest. Who's going to blank first? Jay Morrison said, Mike Brown just doesn't blink, and we all know that. So if we all know that, Jamar Chase's agent knows that, Jamar Chase knows that, the purpose of sitting out of practice is preparing for this upcoming season for a war you're not going to win. Why even go through it to begin with? That's the big question I have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't necessarily understand what the holdout's for either. I think Jay Morrison's point on Friday was perfect, and Joe Burrow talked about how important camp was last year with T having one of the worst games we've ever seen from a wide receiver in week one, and how important it was that they missed camp. And now they're missing camp when everyone's healthy because Jamar's mad about his contract, but he's here and he's catching balls after practice and he's walking through the locker room for the social media team and seems to be hanging out and having a good time. Doesn't seem to be any bad blood or anything like that. And I don't really understand what he's holding out for. I don't think anyone expects that he's going to get a contract done the offseason, or it would have already been done. He has his fourth year this year. He has his fifth year option the year after that. I think the only time it makes sense for him to hold out is next offseason. So I don't really know what he's waiting for. There's been some slight bubblings that CeeDee Lamb's close to a deal with the Cowboys, so maybe he's waiting on that. But the reported money for that's not above Justin Jefferson, so it wouldn't even reset the market. I don't understand what the Bengals are waiting for unless it's appeasing T. Higgins. They've done such a good job of keeping that bridge intact and keeping that relationship in a good spot with T that I don't know that they want to extend Jamar when they have, dealt with this contract situation with T. Higgins all offseason and basically just stick it to T and say, you're going to be here on a rental, we're locking up the other guy type of thing. Maybe they're just trying to keep everyone happy in the locker room. That's really the only rationale I can think for why a deal's not done already if Jamar's going to hold out.
T. Higgins is in that video of the locker room reveal too. I don't think it's weird, but at the same time, it's like, isn't it kind of a little awkward? Don't you think? Like, is your you're not going to be a Bengal past this season? I know there's always the chance you could re-tag him again, but I don't know. You got him to play nice this offseason. I don't know if you could do it 2 off seasons in a row. and then not lead to some kind of holdout. But that is strange too. But you're right. There does seem to be no animosity. All the guys are super tight. They seemed close. I mean, Jamar, there wasn't anyone looking around, looking awkward, like, well, why do I care? I may not be here.
Yeah.
T. Higgins looked invested into it. So did Jamar Chase. So I thought that was an interesting thing right there. But the one thing you brought up that I thought was interesting too, get this deal done and kind of shove it in the face of T. Higgins. I thought it would be a transition where T. Higgins leaves after this upcoming season, then you get the big deal done with Jamar Chase. Outside of the emotional side of that, dealing with the athletes' egos as far as that's concerned, at a certain point, when is Jamar Chase the bad guy in this situation? Because everyone's looking at him like, hold up, we would have been Team Jamar a year from now, but right now, what the hell are you doing? Like, everyone jumped on Trey Hendrickson. Remember when Trey, and it's not the same, but slightly the same, where he had no leverage. Jamar has no leverage here either. I don't know what leverage Jamar Chase has in this particular situation. And let's just say he shows up to camp today. Then what the hell was the point of all last week? What did you accomplish? Like, to me, especially when you have T. Higgins coming out, who had every right to be pissed off and upset, and he comes out and he's the feel-good guy. He's talking about how much he wants to win a Super Bowl. He just wanted to sign it so that he wasn't a distraction. You have a lot of guys who are doing a lot of things to try to not to be a distraction just for camp to get here, and Jamar Chase to be a distraction a year ahead of schedule. If he ends up winning this staring contest, then more power to him. I'll be bowing down to Jamar saying, well played, my dude, because you're right. Mike Brown does not blink. But if ultimately he's just going to show up in a week and Mike Brown does not blink, I don't know what you accomplished other than not setting the team back. I don't want to be dramatic, but again, you definitely didn't help. You cannot tell me you helped your team in the first week of camp or 2 weeks of camp if you ultimately sit out the first couple weeks. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm very fascinated to see where this goes.
Yeah, am I allowed to be mad at Jamar Chase? I mean, I see everyone on Twitter being like, oh, he's doing the right thing, this is great, get the contract, blah, 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 it's fine, he's going to get signed. I'm not exactly thrilled that he's sitting out. I mean, what practice? You're here for camp. You had all offseason to negotiate your contract. If it was this important to you to have it extended by the offseason, I feel like you probably could have made that a little bit more known. We didn't hear about his contract situation until camp started and he didn't practice when Mike Brown talked after the first day. So I don't really understand. If he was this dead set on having a contract for this season, he should have been more, preemptive about getting that done earlier in the offseason. I don't understand why he's sitting out. I'm starting to get pretty annoyed about it, and if he comes back on Monday or Tuesday, then that's fine too, and this is all for nothing. But if he sits out, a month or two, I'm going to get really upset.
As you should. But, again, so early in the camp. But we'll keep an eye on what's going on as far as that's concerned. You think he's practicing today?
Probably not.
Probably not. I don't think he is either. Jimmy?
No,
No?
probably not.
Reed, is it okay to bring you in on this? Are you going to yell?
No, I'm not going to yell.
Oh, okay.
I'm calm. Do I yell? Do I ever get
the legs bouncing? That's why I wasn't sure. That's
That's
Casey's.
caffeine.
That's Casey's
That's
tell.
caffeine,
That's
big
not
dog.
your tell. That's Casey's tell.
That's
My
caffeine.
apologies.
I know you don't know my ticks because you kicked me off the show and you
very
don't
valid.
get to see me
It's valid.
in action a whole lot. But I mean, I think everything that Jacob said is more than fair. It's if you had all season to talk and have these talks about a contract extension, and you're right. If I'm a little hypocritical for not getting mad at Jamar Chase when I got mad at Trey Hendrickson. I've pretty boisterously said when the Trey Hendrickson stuff came out, I said, listen, you're not going to go back on a contract. You already had this contract just because you played better. That's not how deals work. That's not good business. And yeah, Jamar Chase is currently under the deal for one more year, so he should play under that. So I find myself in a little bit of a hypocritical stance for not getting on Jamar Chase's case, and I think Jacob brought a lot of good points to that.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Obviously, the Jamar Chase thing will be something that local media, national media, fans, non-fans will be keeping a close eye on, especially as camp continues. Thursday, the first preseason game, not for the Bengals, obviously, but the Hall of Fame game on Thursday night.
Hall of Fame game.
Yep. I'll watch the obligatory 5 minutes and then realize it's not very good football.
Yeah, it's just
That's usually how that goes.
it's the feel and the vibe
watched-
of just football and TV. And then, what's that?
Well, he said he'll watch for 5 minutes and realize it's not very good football. This is
you're
coming
right.
from the guy that watches every college football game
Hey.
in the country.
That's
Like, what are we
true.
talking about here?
I guess that's fair.
You did say you watch any college football, right?
I will watch
Regardless of
any
it.
college football game.
I'm a conference snob, so,
Are you?
Yeah.
Maction's my favorite, and Sunbelt's starting to play on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's beautiful.
The Maction, I at least, I could support, but the Sun Belt.
Sun Belt's the only conference left with divisions. It's beautiful. It's the way college football was meant to be played.
It's beautiful, Reed. It's beautiful.
I'll give it credit. I've always had this. Like, everyone always complains about college basketball as opposed to the NBA. They're like, man, college basketball is a hard watch because they're just clunking threes all the time. Yeah, when the players aren't as good in college and on the basketball court, they miss threes. When they're not as good in football, you get 85-yard touchdowns, which is objectively cool. Like, you watch a MAC game, they're just chucking it down the field, and they score a 76-yard touchdown. You're like, all right, at least that's fun. At least that's more fun.
That's right.
How about the TBT last night selling out that arena for the alumni teams for Kentucky and Louisville?
That's super cool.
Talk about Ohio State-Michigan's rivalry, but forget how much those two schools hate one another. Cincinnati Xavier hate one another as well, but, is what it is. All right, let's continue talking Bengals. A step away for a few moments. When we come back, Joe Burrow comes up a little earlier on the NFL Top 100 list than I expected. I thought it would be a minute before we would get to where Joe Burrow lands on this Top 100 list, and we did not have to wait as long as I thought we would have to. And yeah, where his placement on this list is it's a head scratcher. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Mics are on.
NFL Top 100 list. Earlier we talked about the surveys, right? Not nearly the same, but again, there's always surveys. It's list season. It's this, that, and the other. We say we don't care about lists. We say we don't care about rankings. We say a lot of things. When our teams are well represented in these lists and rankings, we don't have, these rankings, whatever. I'm an Ohio State fan. You're an Ohio State fan. Ohio State's top 3 in the country. Yeah, we're used to that. You were at Alabama for a while. Yep, Alabama number 1. No surprise there. What do you mean we're number 5? Now you care, right? Like, we only care about lists and we only care about rankings. We only care about these things. And by the way, when I say we care, when we care, it's when you say you don't care, right? That, like, anytime someone says, well, these lists are stupid, that means that means the list won. The lists are put out to get a reaction, all right? The lists aren't always put out to try to reflect exactly how it should be, because right now this is that time of year. Well, yes, camp is officially underway. There is stuff to talk about, no doubt about it. But again, it wants to generate a reaction. Now, this list is kind of interesting, the NFL Top 100, because from my understanding, this is put together all by the players' votes. Okay, and I don't know the process as far as how many votes. I don't know, do the players, Jacob, sit there and they make their top 100, and then whoever gets the most one? I don't know how it's all distributed. But the bottom line is we have, they do 100 to 91 or whatever. They just break it down 10 at a time. Well, we finally get to 40 to 31. Okay, in the NFL's top 100 list. All right, coming in at number 40, Devontae Adams, wide receiver for the Raiders. Coming in at number 31 is Deron Bland, the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. Coming in at number 39, Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that got people's attention first. But then you start doing math. Then you start looking at, okay, not 39 and moving forward. You start looking at the players behind it. Like, okay, he's better than all them, but hold up. This player hasn't been listed yet. We haven't seen this guy pop up. And then you see Tua Tagovailoa is listed at number 36. You see Jordan Love is listed at number 34. A lot of interesting things to take away from here. I think it's hard to try to sit there and make a list of when you have so many different positions. But when you narrow it down to just the quarterbacks, we all know whether you like Joe Burrow or dislike Joe Burrow. I know all of you like him, right? He's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that's really up for debate. So for him to not just be at 39, but to have 2 quarterbacks ranked ahead of him in just the 40 to 31 ranking alone, that's kind of a head scratcher, especially when it's Tua Tagovailoa and Jordan Love. Now, I started to do this whole, well, okay, Joe Burrow's been injured and has had to miss full chunks of seasons for 2 of the first 4 he's been in the league. I think we know he's talented, but the injury concern. But then I'm looking at Tua. I think we're pretty concerned about his injuries as well, correct? You look at Jordan Love, who hasn't been available for the majority of the seasons that he's played in because he's been a backup. And even when he's been a starter, it's not like he has killed it in every start that he's been out there. I'm very confused as to how the players put Joe Burrow where he is at number 39. We all know there are not 38 players in the NFL better than Joe Burrow, but that's exactly where he falls on this top 100 list.
Yeah, I think my main question is, what is this list ranking? I mean, we see it every year, and I don't think anyone really knows what it's ranking. Are you ranking the best players in the league, or are you basing it off of last season? Are you projecting? What are you ranking here? And I think that's the most important thing to figure out at some point, because they always say it's the past season, but if you go back to the first releases, Aaron Rodgers came in at 92. If you remember Aaron Rodgers last season, it was about 2 plays long, and he popped an Achilles. So it's certainly not ranking the players based off just their stats last season.
I forgot about Rodgers. You're
like,
right. Yeah.
It's projecting forwards. I mean, Jordan Love played most of the games last season, but he had 8, 9 good ones, and he's coming in as almost a top 30 player. Joe Burrow, obviously, he was hurt. He played 11 games. He dominated the 49ers. He had some great flashes during the season. Obviously, he was banged up. I don't expect him to be in the top 10 like he was last year, but I certainly didn't expect him to be 39. It seems insane to me. No matter what the criteria is for this list, it's low. It's a low ranking, in my opinion.
Real quick, is Everett, if you're going to take shots at me, you at least need to be intelligent enough to make sense when you're doing it. Because let's be clear, bottom line is, this isn't a media list. So when I said that, yes, the media loves Joe Burrow, the media didn't make this list. So continue back to your regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I expected Burrow to be probably in anywhere from like the 7 to 10 range in this year.
Get out. Leave. I'm not doing this show as long as Reed is in this office. Get out. See ya. I demanded Casey be in this room, and I want Casey back. Get out of here, Reed. Get.
And Kenner gets what he wants, so look
Yes.
who's back.
Finally. Good working conditions. Finally.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Casey just in time to get mad about Joe Burrow being ranked so low.
Oh, I mean, it's abysmal. I don't understand it at all. I mean, I get that it's a yearly ranking, but that low?
But is
Are we
it?
kidding? He just
not.
demolished the Super Bowl runner-ups.
Yeah.
Like, crushed them, killed the Buffalo Bills. I mean, like, he was on his way to crushing the Ravens before he got hurt. I mean, come on. We all know he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. That's just way too low. The disrespect of putting Tua ahead of him is just...
See, I think it's
I'm
worse
starting
to love.
Well, I'm starting to project the other quarterbacks that are going to be ahead of him.
Jimmy's excited.
Like somebody over here, which is worse than either of these two.
Yeah. Your quarterback, your guy,
I know.
He's going to be like a top 15 player.
I guess.
I don't know. The list frustrates me because I know it's for clicks, and I know that I really don't think that there's anything behind it. I think they're kind of just putting a list together and, okay, looks good. And then they know that if Tua's ranked above Joe Burrow, that'll get clicks. If Jordan Love is ranked above Joe Burrow, that'll get clicks. That'll get responses. That'll make people mad. Yeah, I think what I think they should do is go more of like the positional rankings route. I think that would make a lot more sense. I think people would actually take that and kind of like that would create like actual debate rather than debating about is Quinnen Williams a better football player than Jared Goff when they play 2 totally different positions and one position means a lot more than the other one, yet one of them's 48 and the other one's 37. And then you have with Joe Burrow, who last season, what was he last season? Probably top 5, right?
I think 3.
3? Yeah, last season he was 3. He misses a couple games because he got hurt, and they shut him down because obviously you don't want to risk his future. And then he drops, 36 spots?
He was 6 last year,
6.
so he dropped
Okay,
33
spots. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. They're not ranking off the last season, obviously. Otherwise, I think Jared Goff would be way higher on the list than he is. I think Joe Burrow, if they were actually ranking off last season,
he shouldn't be ranked.
Joe Burrow shouldn't be ranked. Aaron Rodgers shouldn't be ranked.
Saquon was on the list.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and people are going to get mad. But at the end of the day, you just have to look at it and be like, whatever. It's a list. It's for clicks. It's not important.
Well, I would agree if it was for clicks, if media did this, I would say yes, it's for clicks. I do think there's something there when players do it. Now, I've thrown out a couple theories. For one, I do know, like, Jacob, you and I talked about this earlier. So the coaches poll in college football and college athletics in general, but the coaches poll, I mean, when the coaches have to do this whole thing, like, they don't care. They sometimes give it to their assistant and just tell them to fill it out, right? Like, they're not, so sometimes the coaches poll, you would think, man, I'm going to go by the coaches poll because the coaches know, right? Like, they know the sport better than some dweeb reporter, right? Well, now the coaches aren't giving it their full attention. So, and I'm wondering, too, if that's the case here. Are the players giving this NFL top one? So it's all players. The players are filling out this list.
I believe.
So,
I'll double check.
I just looked it up. It says,
Okay.
So who vote? And again, look it up just to confirm. But again, this is according to NFL.com. The top 100 players of 2024 voted on by the players themselves is underway. Okay. And it talks about how August, the top 10 will be announced on August 2nd. Double check to make sure that there's no other layer to it. But everything I'm finding says that it's all the players themselves. Here's the thing. I did this about a year ago. I said, the Cincinnati Bengals, and this isn't a Bengals thing. This is the Kansas City Chiefs. This was Patrick Mahomes. Every time a new player comes into the league, there are layers, right? You come into the league, you're a new character, you're lovable, right? C.J. Stroud last year was amazing. C.J. Stroud, the media loved him. The fans started pulling for him in the playoffs, right? Like he was new blood. But then C.J. Stroud's going to kill it this year, and then he's going to come up short in the playoffs, and then what are we going to do? Well, I don't know. I mean, he's starting to show some traits of not being able to, get his team over the hump in the playoffs, right? Or if he plays poorly in the playoffs. Look at Lamar Jackson. How exciting was Lamar Jackson to start? Everyone loved Lamar Jackson. We were very intrigued by Lamar Jackson, even though we hated him because he's with the Ravens. But, even we had to admit, there's something there. There's something different about this cat. He was just completely different. Now everyone hates Lamar because he's two-time MVP but can't win in the playoffs, right? I think that's where we're at with Joe Burrow. I've always said that the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow, the reason you guys all love him is why that they are a dislikable team around the league. They are cocky. They are arrogant. Jamar Chase runs his mouth. By the way, he's ranked pretty damn low, too. Let's not
That's
forget
what I was about
that.
to get into.
Yeah.
I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals, and this, you can get mad at me all you want. I don't really care. They're to blame for this. They're to blame. Joe Burrow's health doesn't help, but I don't think health plays a big role in this because Tua's ranked higher, and we've already talked about that. I believe the Cincinnati Bengals are a very arrogant and cocky organization. I believe your fan base is a very cocky and arrogant fan base, but you follow your quarterback, and I don't have a problem with that. All right, so with that being said, that comes with the territory. If you're if you're going to sit there and talk about Joe Shiesty and Joe Burrow's swag and his aura, and you're going to talk about all these things, I'm here to tell you, that cockiness, his teammates may love that, the fans may love that, but opposing fans don't. All right, opposing fans don't. That's why they jump on the Bengals case. Teammates, the teams around the league, they don't like it. They don't like the cockiness of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Now you could say, if they were on the Bengals, they would love it. Absolutely. They're all hypocrites. That's how this works. You can't, you ever hear that? You hate them when they're not on your team, but when they're on your team, you love them. That what makes the Cincinnati Bengals great is what also makes them kind of unlikable. They're no longer the feel-good story coming up through the ranks of the NFL. They are a legit Super Bowl contender. They have a very arrogant and cocky quarterback. They have a beyond arrogant wide receiver. And you could say I'm taking shots. I'm not. That's what you love about them. So what you love about them, I think, is what makes them unlovable to the rest of the league.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, and I did just look it up. The NFL Top 100 is an annual television series counting down the top 100 players in the National Football League as chosen by fellow players. The rankings are based on an off-season poll organized by the NFL where active players vote on their peers based on their performance for the recent NFL season. Only players not retired in the next season are eligible for consideration. Players are ranked 1 through 100, and the average ranking from all of the polls is averaged out and then ranked 1 through 100. So it's based on all the ballots coming in. If a guy is averaged at a 44.4 and one other guy's a 44.1, that guy's going to be ahead of him. So it's not necessarily writing down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
It's how every player's writing down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's averaged out on how they are with the rest of the league. So if someone has Jamar at 1 and the next guy has Jamar at 100, he'll be 50. So it is based on the players. A lot of the chat saying the media always has a poll in any kind of rankings, which maybe they're not wrong, but I'm not going to go tinfoil hat for this one. I'm just going to believe that it is a player ranking because I think that's an easier way to kind of, discuss it. And I think Joe Burrow at 39 is getting a lot of the hate, and as it should. There are not 38 players in the league better than Joe Burrow. There's really not even close to that many. There's maybe 10 if you're going at every position. So I think that's crazy. But the bigger issue for me was Jamar Chase. I mean, Jamar Chase was at 45. There's 44 players in the league better than Jamar Chase. With Joe Burrow, you can circle the injury. Oh, he only played, 11 games. The first 3 or 4 were kind of iffy. He didn't look like himself. Yeah, that's fine and dandy, whatever. You can knock him down on the list, sure. Jamar had 100 catches for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. And that's without Joe Burrow for most of the season, and without the Joe Burrow we know for even more of the season. How he's not a top, maybe he'll still be a fringe, top 12 or so receiver, but how he's not a locked-in top 10, probably top 5 receiver is insane to me. And there's no way you can find these players better than Jamar. I understand Puka had a great year. Puka coming in above Jamar and Joe Burrow is crazy in my eyes. Absolutely crazy. He dominated from the slot. He didn't even win on the outside, which is a completely different conversation about how to rank receivers. But to have these guys above, even Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams has been great for many, many years. He didn't have a great year last year, and a lot of that's because of Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, which I understand. But if you're ranking guys based on how they played, Jamar Chase is a better receiver than Devontae Adams than he has been for basically 3 years.
Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Casey, I want your take on this when we come back. I want to pick this up because I see a lot of people just, again, when I say things, it's going to come across as I'm a hater. I don't think that my take is a wild one about the Bengals being an unlikable team around the league. And by the way, that's not a bad thing for you guys. They're unlikable because that means that's the team that people are striving, like Patrick Mahomes. Now, that's the wild thing here. That's the wild card in this. He's going to be ranked number 1. He seems to be a guy that's universally liked around the league, despite the fans always seem to pile it on him, right? Now, I say that because you got the Raiders who are literally making puppets out of him and, taking shots at him like it's the wildest thing. But let's step away for a few moments. I'm curious Casey's thoughts on this as well, because I don't think it's a hot take to say that the Cincinnati Bengals, what you love about them, their arrogance, their cockiness, all that stuff that you love about them, I don't know why you guys can't comprehend that that is an unlikable thing for teams around the league. I think that plays a role in this. And if I am wrong, outside of just calling me an idiot, which I see a lot of people doing in the chat, whatever, if you have anything intelligent to respond with as far as your theories, I would love to hear them. What other reason would so many Cincinnati Bengals be disrespectfully ranked on this? Because it's not just Joe Burrow. It's also, as we talked about, Jamar Chase. All right. It's
and
also
Hendrickson.
That was my next one. And T. Higgins, by the way, T. Higgins is going to be, I'm curious where he ends up on this. Do you think he ends up higher?
Oh, there's no way he's above
but
Jamar
he might, because
Joe.
he might be a likable Bengal. He might be a likable Bengal. He's the victim, right? He might be ranked a little higher. I don't know. But let's continue with this conversation when we come back. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Now I'm saying everyone's unintelligent, apparently. I just asked for an intelligent response. Don't just call me names because you don't like my take. Counter with a take of your own. That's all I'm asking. It's not that hard. I'm not going to say you're intelligent because you're taking shots at me. I'm sorry. That's weird. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, thank you, sir, for the response. I'm not going to do that. Okay? I would like to know, and I'll start with Casey because this is why I wanted to come back. Casey, why do you believe it? If it was just Joe Burrow and, let's say Jamar Chase was ranked in the top 15 and that Hendrickson moved up because he moved back 3 spots. He had a career year. Hendrickson was amazing. And I think that because the defense statistically was so poor last year, he didn't get enough love for the dominant season that he had. I think with the, with the top of the league in sacks and all that, I don't think he got enough love, mainly because they're well, statistically, second worst defense in the NFL. We're not going to give you that love. I do believe he got hurt because of that. With that being said, he moves back 3 spots after having a career season. That doesn't make sense. It's not just Joe Burrow that was disrespected in this list. It's Jamar Chase. It's Trey Hendrickson. I mean, will any other Bengals show up in the top 30 moving forward? I mean, why do you think? We all know. I agree with you guys. These guys they're not ranked proper. They all need to be significantly higher. Jamar Chase, there's not 40-plus better players than him. No way in hell that there's 37 or 38 better players than Joe Burrow. I'm agreeing with all of you. I'm not hating like you guys are saying. I'm just throwing out a theory as to why I think that this is, and I'm just curious, why do you think so many of these players are being disrespected in these rankings? Because the players are telling you this, not the fans, not the media, the players. I think that plays a huge role in this.
Yeah, let me back you up, Kenner, because I don't think people realize or remember that there was a significant quote from Jamar Chase saying, "We are the villains of the league." That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. People don't like the Bengals, and that's okay. That's okay. This list, you already know, it's crap. It's garbage. My biggest complaint is with Hendrickson being as far as he is down the list. How can you be a top 3 edge rusher? How could you be one of the guys that almost led the league in sacks, 17.5 sacks? The top 5 edge rushers will be in the top 20 of this list. 100%. You already know. So why is Hendrickson all the way down as far as he is? It makes no sense to me. I agree with you about Jamar Chase. I agree with you about Joe Burrow. Both of those guys missed time. So I can kind of maybe justify them slipping down some. I still think they slipped down way too far. Yeah. But Hendrickson played all season long, and he's completely disrespected. And I think I've had this take on the show many times about Trey Hendrickson, that we debated whether or not you would want Myles Garrett or if you would want TJ Watt. I still think you have a conversation about Hendrickson at least. I mean, the dude is productive still, right? I mean, I think he's 3rd or maybe he's 2nd in NFL sacks this year. Jacob, you might back me up on that one. But still, I don't get it, man. I don't understand. The list is just horrible. I think everyone in this chat knows that people don't like Cincinnati. We are the villains of the league, and I'm okay with that. I think we embrace that, to be honest with you.
Well,
2nd in the league.
Here's my thing is, at the end of the day, it's almost impossible to rank a defensive end among a list of quarterbacks and wide receivers and running backs, because people are going to gravitate more towards the offensive players. So I think it's tough when you're having to rank every single position, because then it's hard to really take into account of how they're ranking positional value in a sense. And
let me ask,
obviously, I feel like more defensive guys are going to be lower on the list than offensive guys, but that's just my opinion.
Let me ask you this. Would you be able to list 76 other players in the NFL that would be better than the 2nd leading sack leader in the NFL? Could you do that? Because I don't think I can.
My main thing is if Trey Hendrickson is a top 5 edge rusher,
Yeah.
then there's not 75 players better than him.
Correct.
If he's a top 10 edge rusher, maybe.
He's a top 3.
I think he's probably in the 5 to 7 range for me. So I think he's low, and I definitely think he should have went up. I think he should have been more right around where Jamar was, in like the 50 range.
Yeah, I could see that.
I could make the argument otherwise. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see the rest of the remainder of the list. If any of the other top 10 sack leaders are ahead of Trey Hendrickson, I think this list is just stupid. Which I haven't gone deep into this list.
Hutchinson's ahead of him.
Hutchinson's ahead of him. Yeah. I mean, with the year that we had last year, I just don't see how. Like, Danielle Hunter had one less sack than Trey Hendrickson, and he's higher on the list. I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why he's so low on the list, and there's only one explanation for it. It's because players, fans, analysts do not like the Bengals. That's the only other explanation I can give, because there's nothing statistically that says that he should be that low.
I think Jacob's right when he says he said in the chat that a lot of it has to do with popularity among the players, and I think that's definitely right. I think if you're just looking at what player is more popular in the NFL, looking between a player like Trey Hendrickson and a player like Aiden Hutchinson, I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to take most of those votes because he is 23 years old. He just came into the league, and he's had 2 very good seasons to start his career. So I think
he's also a better run defender with more interceptions than Hendrickson.
He does have, yeah, exactly. So
I
think it's a lot of it has to do with popularity. But I agree. I think Trey Hendrickson's great. I think he should be higher than what was he? You said 77.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's tough just to kind of understand all 100, because some people view positions more important to a football team than others do. So I think that's just kind of what it boils down to, is it's impossible to rank all the positions into one list in my eyes.
Well, the players do it.
I know.
And Joe Burrow stinks. 39, dude. 39. No. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I don't think the players are sitting down giving this a true evaluation. That's why this list does stink.
Right. And
they're not actually sitting down and truly evaluating every player at every position around the league. But you know what? Look what it did. There's a lot of shows doing this today. We're doing this today. They win.
And
They do.
They win.
They always win.
at the end of the day, I mean, if the list was truly based on last season, I think Jared Goff is higher than Joe Burrow. That's just my opinion. But Jared Goff was also second in the league in
Jimmy,
passing
hot takes.
by
Yeah,
45
hot
yards.
take. The quarterback who missed half the season is worse than the quarterback that made the championship game.
Jared
Right,
Goff
but
is very
I don't
good.
think Jared Goff's better than Joe Burrow. I'm just saying if the list is truly a based off last season thing, I think there's no doubt about it. He should be higher on the list going into this year. He had 4,500 yards with almost 2 1,000-yard rushers. So.
You're more bothered. So Tua being ranked higher than Burrow or Love, I would be more bothered by Love than Tua. Tua's not bad. Tua's very, very good. I don't think Love is anywhere close to Burrow. That's why I'm like, I could see Tua getting a little love because he has the Tyreek Hill and he has the weapons. Like Love is like that. But me and you are way apart on Love. I'm not a big Jordan Love guy. You are, but you're not bothered by the Jordan Love one.
Not as much as Tua. I think Jordan Love's a considerably better quarterback than Tua. So that's kind of why. Like, I think Jordan Love is closer to being a top 10 quarterback than Tua is. So I'm not necessarily. Like, I can understand why, if you're projecting forward, you would have Jordan Love that high. I don't think he should be ahead of Burrow. But having Tua that high, we've seen the peak of Tua, and it's leading the league in passing in September and October. And
exactly. And
falling
off
apart
the
when it
cliff,
gets cold.
yeah.
So I don't
No,
know.
I dirty team too.
Yeah.
Cheap shots and stuff. I mean, he didn't stand a chance, dude.
Do you think any of it has to do with the contracts that have kind of come?
I certainly don't
their
think it
way?
hurts.
Yeah.
Like as far as what, like playing a role in
Tua and Love
Like,
getting
oh,
paid.
he got a massive contract, so I'm going to put
on the
him
same
higher,
day,
you know?
which is wild. I wonder when they cut off the votes for that stuff for
Yeah,
But I think that helped. By the way, my favorite one so far. I know Everett hates me, but I do think I would put him number if I have to rank the chat later on this week. Just because of this creativity here, Kinner is part of Tuanon. I think that's my favorite response.
Good.
Right there.
That's a good chat.
is good.
Unless it's been used before, but I haven't seen it, and that's pretty good.
No, that is a good one.
As far as that's concerned. So, closing thoughts on that. I think we're done with that, right? I think we're done with I'm curious to see what comes out more. I'm sorry that they got a little heated between me and some. It's not the whole chat. It's not me versus the whole. Although it does.
No, I think it is, because I think if you attack one person in the chat, you attack the whole chat.
That's fine. I mean, but
They're united.
I'm just saying. Like, all I asked was, why do you think that rather than just complain about where they are on the list, why do we think that they are where they are? That's all.
It's not the worst take I've ever heard.
So, and you've heard some doozies. They have been pretty bad on my end, no doubt. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. I know we got ads with Casey comes right into the fire. He has some ads to take care of, to pay some bills, of course. We'll have headlines we'll have news, not news, coming up around the corner, plus get people's thoughts on the new kickoff rules, or at least what was released yesterday about when you can't onside kick. You kind of got to let the other team know. It's very.
I thought we
weird
lived in
stuff.
America, Kinner.
I know. I mean, a lot of freedoms being taken away.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, but you know what? That's the Tuanon conspiracy theory that I'm willing to push. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers next.
All right. Let's do some ads real quick. I actually recently got emailed some new ad reads for Encore. So I'm going to do the new ad reads for Encore.
Whoa.
The Bengals Report is proudly sponsored by Encore Technologies. At Encore Technologies, man, I'm struggling. We deliver cutting-edge IT solutions for a data-driven world, from mobile computing to desktop support and to advanced data center solutions. We help businesses enhance efficiency and
Productivity.
that's right, Jimbo.
I was worried.
You-
I was
you
worried
thought
the
that
new
they were
ad
gonna
read
take
That
it out?
would have been a shame.
productivity.
I was a little
I would have been
sad
useless.
at first because I thought, oh no, the thing has changed. But no.
Yeah, we're just phasing Jimmy out a couple weeks early.
Yeah.
Visit encore.tech, where your path to innovation begins. And then let me tell you about Pawnee Water. Made right here in Hamilton, Ohio, uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing other brands use. The result being a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Pawnee Water at PAHHNI water.com.
What was that?
Great tasting water. What?
Was that PAHHNI.com?
PAHHNI water.com.
That's right.
Pawnee Water.
Yup.
Thank you. They actually brought us a crate. Oh,
Phenomenal water.
the water, like, legitimately, I don't get hydrated unless Pawnee brings me water.
That's right.
So keep it coming. Keep it coming because I drink.
I've been filling my bottle with ice at home.
Yeah.
And then I come in, I grab a bottle of Pawnee, I pour it in here. It's great.
It's a great combination.
All day chill.
Hopefully it doesn't, like, the ice contaminate the
Oh, no,
healthy,
no.
superior
No
water.
free ads, but that metal water bottle keeps the ice cold for like 12 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, no
very
free
nice. Let's do Game Time. The Game Time app, our ticketing app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Lowest prices, last minute tickets guaranteed. And let's just take a look at some of those great deals that Game Time has to offer. I know that there's probably a good deal tonight for Reds Cubs, which is sitting at $11. It's not bad.
Ooh.
Eagles at Bengals sitting at $162. That's an interesting price there. If you're wanting to travel up to the Hall of Fame game, that is this Thursday at 8 p.m. $34 for that ticket. Might be a little interesting to.
Hold on.
What?
Are we going to the Hall of Fame game?
Do you want to?
For $35 on Game Time?
Wait, the Bears are in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out.
Well, of
It's
course.
Bears Texans.
Yeah, Bears Texans.
I'm out.
Caleb Williams versus CJ Stroud for 4 plays.
Do you think they'll even play at all?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Creed, Riverbend, $70. Luke Combs, Paycor Stadium, $102. Yeah, I said that very, very weird, didn't I? 102
for 100 for 102 doll hairs. I like it.
So yeah, check them out. They got lots of good deals, low prices, and maybe if you're just last minute shopper like I am, you'll get a great deal. So check
That's
them out,
right.
download it, use code OTB. Other news and information. Do we have any updates on the tickets tonight?
No. We have not chosen a section yet. I think we're going to do that after the show. And then I think we were saying Phi Optics.
I got Phi Optics.
The plan is Phi Optics.
Yeah.
If you're not going to sit in Phi Optics, that's fine. I know some other people had tickets that they were already going to use for tonight. That's great. We're going to go down to the banks. I think we're shooting for like an hour before the game and just hang out. We'll determine what bar we're at. We'll send it in the Discord. We might just be hanging out outside, whatever it is. It's supposed to be a nice day, so we'll let you guys know where we're at. Try to come down early, hang out before the game. If not, we'll figure something out during the game to go meet up somewhere and say hi to everybody. So Phi Optics section, if you haven't got tickets yet, aim for that. Otherwise, we'll see you all around.
Okay, so those of you that are needing the Discord link, I will post that here in just a minute. Download that. We have a great community in there. It's just
great.
the chat outside the show.
24 hours a day.
It's
if
great.
you love the chat,
I'm not there, so we're good.
Kinner's not allowed. Kinner's not allowed. No, if you like the chat from 10 to 12, join the Discord. It's 24 hours long, separated for all the different teams and everything like that. So it's real nice to just talk to everyone in there. So make sure you join.
Yeah, so I'll do that here in just a minute. And then, of course, we have memberships. If you haven't been aware of that just yet, we do provide memberships for people. We do watch-alongs. We do box lunch, which is just an extra hour outside the shows on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We do some games sometimes, Quiplash. Lots of fun stuff for the members. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. That will boost the spirits here in the room, and maybe that'll every like will give Kinner an extra bill of health there. And yeah, so we'll jump right back into the show here in just a minute, unless you have anything for us.
Love you guys. I don't dislike. Someone just said, "Do you even like us?" I'm like, "Yes." I don't dislike anybody. I respond to you. That's all.
You know, if you want to show your good sign of faith to the chat, you should join our Discord.
I don't think they want him in there.
Someone
But
said Kinner
that's why
isn't
you
going.
should
You
join.
see, that's how much you guys mean to me. I won't go, and I will not join the Discord. How about that? The things, the sacrifices I make is for the fans, for the listeners. You know.
Yeah.
There
No,
you go.
the chat opinion on you being in the Discord will change 180 if the Bengals beat the Browns.
You know,
They'll just tear you apart in there.
And see, the thing is, I've been doing this show for what, 3 weeks now?
Oh, yeah.
I've yet to wear a brown shirt.
I know, it's
At
impressive.
this point, but I've been trying to play nice, but I might as well I have a lot of browns.
I think what are you trying to save? The relationship's already cooked.
it's done.
Yeah.
So it's like, I might as well just go back to being me. I might even just wear a helmet for the show, you know, but I might just wear the Browns helmet the whole time.
I'll wear the Bengals helmet.
I mean, I'm bringing them tomorrow.
We butt heads enough. It'd probably be safer.
Exactly. I mean, man, that Inquirer post is absolutely my favorite post of all time. I don't know. We can't talk politics on here, so I'll just leave it alone. But it's
Back to radio.
The Inquirer. What'd you say?
I said back to radio.
Yeah, back to radio. But the Inquirer just had to clarify something about Joe Burrow, and it is the funniest tweet I think I've ever seen in my life. I'll let you look it up. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff there. I mean, now we know. We the Inquirer finally informed people on something. How about All right, we can get back to the radio side.
I saw that. Did you see that, Casey?
No, I have not.
Oh well.
Well, we were supposed to be.
We were supposed to be.
We were supposed to be. It's all right.
All right. Well, let's go back to radio.
All right.
All right, and we welcome you back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. A little news, not news. Elliot's headlines will return when? Well, Elliot returns. When does Elliot return, by the way?
I think Monday.
Monday, the big
I think
day?
Monday.
Wonder if he's
Don't
having a
quote
good
me on
time.
that.
Wonder if he's having a good time. I see he was getting some tweets out last night.
He was. He can't really
He can't stay
relax,
away.
it seems.
Yeah, he can't stay away.
You're on vacation. You don't have to be upset about the Reds every hour of the day. Play some golf. Relax.
Yeah, I saw it. So yesterday there was some Fire David Bell talk on the show,
There was.
and I see people were happy about that.
They were. People have wanted us. Elliot obviously wasn't here to co-sign, but everyone else that was on the show yesterday, including myself, finally caved. It's time to just get rid of David Bell. I'm done fighting the good fight. I was trying to defend the man for so long. I still don't think it's his fault, but at some point, you know, I've been defending him for about 2 months now, and he's yet to give me any kind of help on the management front to boost his arguments. So, yeah, I'm out on David Bell. It's time to make a change. You can't change 27 guys, so you might as well change David Bell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only side of Elliott's that I really agree on is like, you move on from David Bell. What exactly changes? It's not the philosophy, but
Yeah.
like I do think it doesn't matter. Just there has to be some kind of change of scene. I think David Bell will be a manager again at some point. Again, we're talking as if he's been fired. He hasn't, and he probably will be back next year. I mean, that's just how things seem to operate. But nonetheless, but yeah. So Elliott, shout out to Elliott. He comes back Monday, and then the room will be complete again. And then Jimmy's about to leave us here in 2 weeks?
I know. Yeah, Reed's got me out of here, so.
Got rid of Reed, get rid of you.
Yeah, Reed's excited.
Better
Keeping me
watch
out
it,
of
you
here.
two.
Next on the chopping block.
Yeah. All right. News, not news. As we get to this portion of the show, news, not news. According to ESPN, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been very, very impressed by the performance of Justin Fields here early on, and they said that they have begun to lean towards entertaining the possibility of him being the team's starting quarterback. Justin Fields potentially the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? News, not news.
Oh, I absolutely think it's news. As soon as Justin Fields was traded there, they already had Russell Wilson, so you kind of took that as a nod that they didn't necessarily trust Russ to slide in week 1 and be a no-nonsense starter. And then he tweaked that calf early in camp. I think the more reps Justin Fields gets with the ones, the more likely it becomes that he's the starting quarterback. His ceiling is much, much higher than Russell Wilson at this point in his career. I think the Steelers would kind of be stupid to not try Justin Fields and just see if it works. He showed flashes in Chicago with a pretty bad roster around him, a bad O-line, bad weapons. They've overhauled that for Caleb Williams. And I don't think Justin Fields ever really got a fair shot in Chicago. So we'll see what happens in Pittsburgh. I certainly expect him to start at some point this season, whether it's week 1 or later in the year when Russell Wilson has fallen off the rails like we saw the last 2 years in Denver. But, yeah, I certainly think it's news. I think the more we see Justin Fields in practice, the more likely it is he starts.
Jimmy, news, not news. Justin Fields, according to ESPN, Steelers potentially leaning towards the idea of liking him as a potential starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's news. I feel like a lot of what I've heard throughout the offseason is how, Fields is going to be doing other things, maybe returning kicks. Russell Wilson is for sure the QB1. And I think with the way that we've seen kind of Russell Wilson trend the last couple years in Denver, he may not be the quarterback that he once was when he was in Seattle, nowhere near it anymore, obviously. And I think Justin Fields he's still young. I mean, he still has a lot of potential. It didn't work out in Chicago. Most quarterbacks don't work out in Chicago. So I think maybe a new change of scene will be good for him, and I think he can definitely compete for the starting job. And I think if things don't go well with Russ, I think it's definitely news to know that the Steelers are very much open to putting Fields into that role.
I mean, when we talked about this Russell Wilson injury, I want to say last week, I talked about how the calf injury thing has me with PTSD a little bit. We have no idea when Russell Wilson will be back to that role, and if they feel comfortable with Justin Fields, that's a little concerning. I would hope that they don't feel comfortable with that situation. That would be the news coming out of camp. But I will say that the situation there for Justin Fields, I don't hate it. I don't hate what's around him. I don't hate the situation that he's in. I think he's got a much better team surrounding him than what he had with the Bears, which gives him a chance to do something that he wasn't able to do in Chicago. I still think he's a bit of a fidget spinner. I think that he's not a great quarterback, but Pittsburgh's proven time and time again over the years that you don't need great quarterback play to still be a relevant team in the NFL, to still be able to make it to the playoffs. So that being said, he's got that added dynamic too with the run game that I just feel like really fits them. So I think that it's a little concerning as a AFC North fan, as a Bengals fan. It's a little concerning, but I'm not going to hit the panic button. It is still Justin Fields, but that Steelers team, man, I think it's really close to being a quarterback away from being a real problem.
Yeah, I think for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is news, but not for the reasons we all just discussed. I think it's news because I don't think just because they're leaning towards him being the starter. Look, the calf injury issues is the big concern for Russell Wilson. You guys know the calf injury, how much that really impacted Joe Burrow's season last year. And Russell Wilson's older, so that could also play a bigger role in his comeback as far as that's concerned. I think it's news because I don't think Justin Fields was brought in to be the starter, and I think if Justin Fields was brought in to be the starter, that's not a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It might be a good thing for the rest of the AFC North, although some of you might be higher on Fields than others. But that'll be something to keep an eye on as far as that's concerned, no doubt about it. All right, news, not news. We continue on here. College football. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders. And I actually think this is kind of cool because of the NIL tie-in here. To not just everyone wants to do a podcast, right? Like he is going to do a podcast, but he's going to be paid to do a podcast as part of an NIL deal. News or not news that Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders has announced that his new podcast, Too Legendary, will be with Overtime, and it's part of an NIL deal, and that'll be going on throughout the season. I'll jump first on this because I think that this is huge news because every time we hear from Shedeur Sanders, it becomes a headline. Shedeur Sanders takes a shot at former teammates while playing video games, and it goes viral. Shedeur Sanders takes a shot or just says his opinion on social media, it goes viral. just like his dad. Anytime the guy says anything of somewhat significance, it goes viral. So now you're going to give him a weekly 1-hour podcast? Oh, yes, this is news. I don't think this is good news for Colorado. I think this can only backfire. I'm going to be entertained. Media should love this. But, yes, this is definitely news. Casey, we'll start with you on this one. Shedeur Sanders getting a podcast, this is going to be – there's some guys you just can't wait to hear what they're going to say, even if you're not interested in what they're going to say, because I think everything he says will be picked apart. I'm fascinated by this. Too legendary, the Shedeur Sanders podcast.
Is there any mention of a co-host at all, or is it just him?
That's a good point. I do not know. I'm sure there'd probably have to be a co-host, I would assume.
I would assume. Personally, I love player podcasts. I think they give you a little insight to how they view players around the league, or I guess around the college league. But they always drop something at some point that is very viral. I'm thinking of moments with like the Amon-Ra St. Brown brothers, their podcast.
Yeah.
That's a great podcast. They had that moment where they made that bet amongst themselves, not on a
Not in the team
betting
facility, obviously.
Yeah, not in the team facility, but they made a bet about who would win that football game, and that was great. That was electric content. I think about the Micah Parsons podcast, how he's just listing his top athletes, right? All these guys that list their top athletes, and we get to pick it apart and gauge if they're right or not, like the top 100 list. Very similar to that. So I like the player podcast a lot. I think it's great for entertainment. It's going to be a huge distraction for Colorado, 100%. You already know it's going to be absolutely horrific if he just starts complaining about games that they lost, or if he starts complaining about teammates. It's just going to go right back in their face. So it's going to be exciting.
Jimmy, news, not news. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Again, too legendary. Shedeur Sanders podcast will be coming out throughout the season. Again, he's valued, his NIL valuation's like $4.5 million. I mean, it's the highest of all athletes out there. It's pretty insane. The dude's going to be making some coin, no doubt about it. But news, not news. That, well, a guy that's very talkative is going to be getting a podcast.
Yeah, I think it's news just because it's Colorado, and I think a lot of eyes are always or have been looking at Colorado ever since Deion got there and Shedeur got there last year. One thing that makes it even more like obviously news is because when I believe he was streaming the new college football game a little bit ago with Travis Hunter, and there was that clip that went viral of him saying that, oh, the offensive line is realistic, like they can't block at all. I think that you could see a couple more moments like that, which will definitely create a lot of stir up around this podcast, and the things that Shedeur is saying will definitely kind of be pulled and picked apart, like you said. So I think it's definitely news. Is it news that I care about? Not really. I'm not a huge fan of Colorado, but I think that it'll definitely be a big thing in the college football world this year.
Jacob, I'm curious. I don't think coaches can't tell these athletes they can't do podcasts now. I'm sure that if they had their choice, they would not want it. I have a hard time believing that Nick Saban would be a big fan of his players.
They can't tell them not to do podcasts, but they can heavily imply that podcasts are not allowed in this locker room.
Yes, so it's like what happens here. Like, I mean, man, that like so many things are changing now, obviously. But obviously, we all think this is news, right? That he's going to get a podcast.
Yeah, no, anytime a Sanders does anything right now, I think it's news. And Shedeur's probably the biggest name in college football this season, and he's going to have a podcast, and I think that's news. But I think it's news for a slightly different reason than the rest of you guys. Obviously, his quotes and everything have been so public, but when he tweeted about the player that left Colorado and underperformed last year right after the NFL draft, if you remember that tweet, his number one pick odds dropped from almost even money to plus like 300 or 400. How many more of those quotes come out of this podcast that continue to drive those odds down? The people that are going to be tuning into this podcast are diehard college football fans. I'm probably going to listen every now and then. And NFL owners and NFL coaches. That's who's going to be listening to this podcast as well and seeing how Shedeur Sanders handles what I think is going to be a tumultuous season in Boulder, that they're going to drastically underperform expectations, maybe make a bowl game, and they're going to see how he reacts when he sits down for a podcast for an hour every week after losing games that they're probably going to be heavy favorites in. I think that's the bigger story, is going to see how he reacts to all of these negatives and all the bumps in the road this year and how it drives his NFL draft stock, because I think it's going to continue to drive it down, because I don't think he's going to handle it well. I think he's going to continue to throw players under the bus like we've seen already. He doesn't seem to be a very good teammate every time he gets a chance to take a shot at someone on his roster or someone that just left his roster. He seems to do it. I think we're going to see more of that in the podcast, and I think it's just going to drive the conversation about him being a number 1 pick or even a top 10 pick down in the rankings, along with, I think, some lackluster play this year.
We're also assuming that the content is going to be college football. It may not be. Like we don't, like, it hasn't really come out to say it's going to be a sports podcast, and I don't know if that hurts or helps them as far as that's concerned. Look, Casey, you brought up the Micah Parsons podcast a little bit ago. Like, you brought up athletes who do it. Micah Parsons does a good, I mean, he has some wild takes. CJ Stroud, I saw Everett in there. He took a break from hating on me to talk about, he loves when CJ Stroud checks him on a lot of stuff. But, like, that's cool when you see just 2 football guys having a football conversation. The problem with Shedeur is it may be, the subject may be football, but it's not always a football conversation as far as as far as being very analytical based or an actual take. It's like you talked about, Jimmy. It was just natural with him. Now, I thought it was funny. I mean, the game's very realistic. We don't have an offensive line.
Oh, it was funny.
I thought it was hilarious.
For sure.
But you're right, Jacob. The other part of it too, his draft stock going to take a hit every time something that goes viral that's not in a positive light. A lot of owners, they're not going to want that type of attention as far as that's concerned. But obviously, the NIL, $4.5 million is what he's being valued at.
Crazy.
With Deion staying at Colorado, if he stays another year, and with that type of money coming in for him, I know you can make more in the NFL, but I almost wonder too, does he come out after this upcoming season? That could be a big thing.
I think the conversation of Shedeur coming back if he doesn't like who's going to pick him is the most real the conversation has maybe been in the modern era for a quarterback actually doing that. He's going to make $5 million next year playing for his dad at Colorado.
Repeat that from the start, because I cut you off. So what would you think he would threaten?
I think the conversation about Shedeur Sanders staying in college if he doesn't like where he's going to get drafted is more real than it's been probably since Eli Manning. Caleb Williams, there was a little bit of bubbling that was possible. I never put any weight into that because he wanted to go to the league. And obviously, he's going to go play in the NFL. Shedeur's just going to go back and play for his dad at Colorado for another year and make $5-6 million.
Yep.
If he plays well this year, if they somehow go 10-2, not 9 wins or somehow, I don't think it's going to happen. But if they somehow have a great year that a lot of people are projecting them to have, then he comes back and he wins the Heisman. Maybe as a senior.
Yeah.
There's some real benefit for Shedeur potentially coming back, especially because I don't think he's an NFL-ready quarterback. So that's another nugget. He might use this kind of, language of, I don't like where I'm getting drafted, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to come back to school, where maybe he just has a smart camp around him who's telling him, hey, you're not ready to go to the NFL. You're going to get exposed in week 1 or week 2. Come back to school, refine your skills for another year, then go and be a high draft pick. I would not be shocked if Shedeur comes back this year after a lackluster season.
Well, then there's also that if there's a team at the top of the draft that Deion doesn't want his son to go to, maybe he could be a big pull in convincing him to come back to school.
For sure.
I do think that's more likely to say Colorado wins only 4 or 5 games, which I think is very likely with the team that they have right now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him back at all. And I think maybe if someone promises to trade up and take him, then maybe Deion will let him go. Or if there's a likable destination at the top of the draft this year, maybe you could see him go. But, I mean, very likely.
The other thing we haven't ruled out either, Deion, him coming, so if he comes back, Shedeur comes back, let's not act like it might be coming back to Colorado. Because Deion could take a bigger job, take his son with him.
True.
And boom, have that Caleb
For
Williams
sure.
effect, like we saw, with USC, this, that, and the other. So we'll say you're heading into year 2 where Lincoln Riley's. No one said he's on the hot seat, but depending on the direction of the season, keep an eye on the USC position with Deion, because all of a sudden you get that would really add that flair to USC. You had Deion to go there, you bring Shedeur with you again, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. This season hasn't even kicked off, nonetheless.
Super wild outside chance.
Oh, yeah.
Colorado has a good season. Cowboys do not. Cowboys let Dak walk, draft Shedeur, hire Deion.
Shedeur for sure. There you go. Cowboys aren't noisy enough, dude.
I know.
They're not noisy enough.
Oh, Jerry would love that. We'd talk Cowboys for 3 days straight. Jerry would be so happy.
Yeah. They'd be very likable, too. They'd get all their players in the top 100.
That's right.
Yeah. So, last one, Brown star running back Nick Chubb. is not expected to be ready for the start of the regular season, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Now, this caught people by surprise a little bit because last week he was doing full-out sprints. I mean, he's doing all the conditioning. He did not start out the camp on the PUP list, so he doesn't have to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. But according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Nick Chubb has begun working on change of direction stuff in addition to full-speed sprinting, and the team is being very cautious not to pressure him by putting a timetable on his potential return. News, not news.
Not news. He didn't affect the Browns when he was out last year. They were still one of the best running teams in the league. I don't think running backs matter ever, so not news. It'll be great if he's back. He'll probably be a little bit more productive than whoever else they plug in there, but I don't think by a whole lot. So, yeah, not news, just strictly because of how I value the running back position.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength as Jacob. I don't think it matters much for the Browns and their future success of the team, him being back. I mean, it's going to benefit the team. It's not going to hurt it if he's back. I mean, you think at least, if they don't rush him back and he's not ready. But I think they'll be fine without him. They already proved that they would be fine without him. So I don't think this is news.
People in the chat pushing back a little bit. They said elite running backs certainly matter. I don't
course.
disagree.
Yeah.
Is post-second reconstructive knee surgery Nick Chubb still an elite running back?
Correct.
I wouldn't be
Right.
so sure.
Yeah, when Nick Chubb went out last year in week 2, the Browns still finished the season from
Wonder if
then
he'll be on the
in
top
the
100.
top 10. What's
Probably
that?
still waiting for him on the top 100.
Oh,
Chubb
that's
did. I
true.
mean-
Yeah, we probably are.
I mean, it's a coin flip between Deshaun and Patrick Mahomes for number 1, to be honest with you, right? But no, like the Browns still had a top 10 run game in football last year post Nick Chubb, and that's not to say that they don't need Nick Chubb. Look, the Ravens didn't need Derrick Henry, but they added Derrick Henry because, again, it could just it could elevate your team, right? Nick Chubb elevates the Browns, but I don't think that the Browns' chances of their ceiling this season depends on Nick Chubb. He's just that cherry on top, dependent when it's all said and done. So, again, him not being ready to start the season, to me, is not news, especially because of the restructured deal. Jimmy, news, not news.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's news, and I think kind of just to harp again on what you guys said, Browns had a great season last year without him. Obviously, he's a phenomenal running back, and I think he's had a lot of great years. But like Jacob said, two knee surgeries. I think it's going to take time, and I think they'll be fine without him for a little bit or for however long it takes. But yeah, no, I think if he comes back when he's ready, I think he's still a great running back. I do think that great running backs matter, but at the same time, I don't think it's huge news. It's hearing he might be out a little longer.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. All right, new NFL kickoff rules have people making fun of the NFL today, at least when it comes to the onside kick, when you're allowed to do it. There's just a lot of changes implemented there. I'm curious everybody's thoughts. We'll talk about that more when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, we welcome you back. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. We wrap up the radio side of the show here with this conversation. The new NFL kickoff rules announced, late yesterday, I guess, whatever. I mean, a lot of stuff started coming out. But the onside kick has people talking. All right, the onside kick has been dramatically changed heading into this upcoming season. And take a listen to this. The onside kick... onside kicks are illegal before the fourth quarter. That's a weird rule change to make, mainly because I do think that they're situational based too. I don't know how many, onside kicks you see in the first half to begin with, unless it's the final possession maybe before halftime and you feel like you have a chance to. I mean, I don't know. So that's a weird rule change to make. I don't know what you're accomplishing. I'm fine with rule changes as long as you are accomplishing something major with that change, even if we don't like the rule change. I know a lot of the kickoff rules over the years have been done to kind of help with player safety. And you can make an argument that all of these changes are about player safety. But you can't say we care about player safety in quarters 1 through 3, but we don't care about player safety in the fourth quarter. What are we doing? So onside kicks are illegal before the fourth quarter. The team must be losing to kick the onside kick. So you have to be losing in the fourth quarter and the fourth quarter only to be able to implement an onside kick. And then let's add one more layer to this. The kicker, no pun intended, the team must announce its intention to kick an onside kick ahead of time. So there's no more catching a team by surprise. You literally have to tell the other team that you are going to go with the onside kick. You can only do it in the fourth quarter, and you have to be losing in the fourth quarter to be able to do this, which is a duh. The no fun league strikes again. I don't understand these rule changes. It's almost, I would have preferred just get rid of the onside kick. Still silly, but that would have made way more sense than adding all these silly little shticky type of changes. I'm not a fan.
The reason why they have those guys announce the kick now is because of where they line up now. Because if they were to do traditional onside kick, it would literally just be kicked right to the kicker every single time because of where they're spaced out. So that's why they're announcing it now. I do think it's a little weird that they limited it to only the losing team in the fourth quarter. It would completely ruin moments like that we're fond of, like the Super Bowl with the Saints and the Colts, where they come out at halftime, kick an onside kick and recover it, and the rest is history. Drew Brees wins his Super Bowl. So that rule changes those types of games, those outcomes. Now, I don't think in recent memory since then that we've seen something like that that I can remember personally in the NFL that stood out, that made a difference in the game. So, there are probably going to be very little situations where they don't kick it in the fourth quarter anyways. And then at that point, I think all the rules kind of make sense to me. I get why you have to announce it because you're already going to be lining up a different way. You'd have to completely change that around. So you have to announce it, and then more than likely you're already kicking in the fourth quarter anyways. So the rules are what they are, but I don't think they make that much of a difference. If you're complaining about the onside kick, you're complaining about the new kickoff rules, which I'm not going to do because I think that it's going to add a whole nother layer to the NFL. It's not going to just be a touchback every single time. We're actually going to see some action on kickoffs now. So I like the trade-off. I'm not going to complain about these.
Yeah, I just thought we lived in a free country. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with this. I mean, I thought, what are the troops fighting for overseas if you can't onside kick with a lead? That's basic freedoms in America that we're afforded, and that's why this is the greatest country on
Toby
earth.
Keith will be
And they're
rolling
taking
over in
them
his
away.
grave, dude.
Yeah, I mean, first we lose Toby Keith, then we lose Jimmy Buffett, and now they're taking away game-winning onside kicks. I mean, it's just absurd. It only happens, once every other decade or so that you get a memorable team with a lead kicking an onside kick, but those points are incredibly memorable. They're super fun to watch, and if it's not a very common issue, why are you removing it from the game in the first place? So I don't know. I probably wouldn't expect that these lists to these rules to last more than a couple years. If you have to announce it anyway, why wouldn't you just give the winning team the ability to announce it and kick it themselves? I feel like you're just taking a point out of the game there that seems unnecessary, since it doesn't even happen very often. So I'm not a huge fan, but it also doesn't matter.
According to the Inquirer, we did not lose Joe Burrow, though. Back to you, Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely weird seeing a rule change on something that I've never really even thought about before. I feel like teams who are winning don't onside kick the ball very often at all. I think it's weird to restrict a team from doing that. That's kind of where I'm lost on it. I understand that there's a lot of changes they're making the kickoff to make it safer and all this and all that, which I think could be good for the NFL, but restricting a team who's winning from kicking it onside doesn't really make sense to me at all. But I don't know, that's kind of where I stand on it. I think it's weird, and
I do think
maybe I have to see it to believe it. I don't know.
I do think what's weird about it is if we're gonna implement these rules and you're not gonna be able to do it on the winning side, you might as well just completely get rid of onside altogether and make it 4th and 20, like the XFL does or whatever the new league is. You just gotta change it completely, right? Just make it to where it's more possibly obtainable, and then it makes more sense to not allow the winning team to possibly convert on that, because I think those are much easier to convert than an onside kick. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but yeah, it's just really weird. I would agree with everyone in this room that it's just very weird to limit the winning team from making a mistake or from clinching a win. It's kind of strange.
This is America.
It's America.
Taking away these teams' freedoms. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see this over the weekend. It irritated me because I'm just tired of this team continuously getting a pass on everything. The Pittsburgh Steelers. George Pickens. Okay, Steelers wide receiver George Pickens and wide receiver coach Zach Azani had a heated exchange after practice over Pickens' lack of effort, right, during the first day of training camp. This was according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, right, and not just that outlet. I mean, it was well documented across all media outlets that were in attendance for that. I guess the problem that I have with this is, and again, every fan base feels like their particular team is always picked on. You know, I know me and Reed, we had this conversation the other day. I know we just kind of had this conversation about the perception of our teams. We feel like everyone's always out to get our teams, this, that, and the other. It must be great to be a Steelers fan because nobody ever goes at your team. No one ever attacks your team. Your team has a lot of noise. Your team makes a lot of noise and continues to get the benefit of the doubt each and every time because of the amount of Super Bowls in your team's history and, well, the fact that your coach has never had a losing season and all this other stuff. But what drives me nuts about the Pittsburgh Steelers is imagine if these continuous headlines that happen in Pittsburgh would happen in Cincinnati, would happen in Cleveland, would happen anywhere else. That coach, that front office, that team would be greatly impacted by that, and the perception would change. The one thing I'm tired of hearing is how Mike Tomlin is a leader of men. Mike Tomlin's a leader of men. Mike Tomlin can do no wrong. Everyone plays hard for Mike Tomlin. No one puts themselves above the team for Mike Tomlin. Everyone loves Mike Tomlin. Now, I'm not sitting here saying you need to hate Mike Tomlin, but I'm just saying there seems to be a lot of noise every year, all the time, on Mike Tomlin-led teams, and it doesn't sound like a guy who leads men. It sounds like a guy who deals with a lot of drama on a team that he seems to always have a lack of control of. I know they're a good team. I know they have a great defense. I know that they're a very well-structured organization. But I think that we give way too much credit to Mike Tomlin for things that we literally bury other coaches for around the league. If Zach Taylor, who we give a ton of credit for, and I give a lot of credit for too when we hear the word culture, all right, Zach Taylor, like I don't put this Jamar Chase contract, thing right now. I don't put that in a drama category. I don't put T. Higgins in a drama category. I don't put Trey Hendrickson in a drama category. That's just natural business-related type stuff. But when you constantly have noise, when there is constantly drama, when there is constantly things that are happening off the field, and hell, lack of effort on the field, where is this leader of men at? How come all these guys seem to not actually fear the repercussions of, oh man, I better not put myself above a team because the leader of men that is Mike Tomlin might get on me? What are we doing? Mike Tomlin continues to get away with having lack of control of his team. It seems every year we're talking about a player that is getting into it with the coach on the sideline. Every year a player is not giving their full effort or just creating drama on the sidelines or getting into it with their quarterback. I mean, Antonio Brown. I know that was quite a few years ago. It doesn't matter. What, the leader of men couldn't get that under control? All right, Le'Veon Bell, the leader of men, couldn't get that under control. Pickens couldn't get it under control. Claypool couldn't get it under control. Sounds like the leader of men has a hard time leading. And it seems like the way to keep that perception going that the leader of men has complete control is let's just get rid of the guys that constantly are the problem on the team as opposed to saying, hey, coach, why can't you get these guys motivated? All right, Zach Taylor does a good job with that. Stefanski does a good job with that. Harbaugh does a good job with that. But the leader of men, that's where it's at. He knows what he's doing. He could do no wrong. I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I really do hope they finish in last place this upcoming season.
Yeah, cosign, all of that. I mean, that was absolutely beautiful. I mean, that was beautiful. Usually when Kinner's talking about teams not named the Browns in the AFC North, I get over here and get mad. But you should just rip on the Steelers more often. We'll all get along. That was great. Yeah,
How'd I do, chat?
They like it. They like it.
They said great job.
I am not a Mike Tomlin fan. I understand that he wins games. I understand that he has Super Bowl rings. He has Super Bowl rings from decades ago, and he's gone 9-8 my entire life. So I am not a Mike Tomlin fan. I understand that he wins games. I understand that he's a good coach, quote unquote. But he's had more talent than basically any coach that I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, he had Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. When Le'Veon Bell was no doubt the best running back in the league. And then Antonio Brown was maybe one of the best receivers ever for a 5-year span, and he didn't win anything. So I think the credit Mike Tomlin gets and the leash that he's given in Pittsburgh is longer than basically any coach. that we've seen. And, for a team that prides himself on being at the top of the list and being competitive every single year, they've put up with mediocrity for a really long time.
I like the chat. Chat, love you guys. I'm getting a lot of praise right now. I've never felt more cool than I do right now. I like this. I should just bash on. So if I stop bashing on the Bengals and bash the Steelers, I'll be likable?
Yeah, you don't even have to say
works?
good things about the Bengals. You could just bash the Steelers.
This job just became easy. Casey, any takeaways before we wrap this up on the radio side?
I mean, I agree with you guys. I do think that Mike Tomlin gets a really, really long leash, and he's been very mediocre with really great talent around him. Some even argue that his one Super Bowl win was with the team that was basically gifted to him.
Do people argue that? Who's pushing back on that?
Steelers fans push back on that.
You're probably right.
But I do think that there was a little bit of an enlightenment last year. If you look at his coaching playoff record, it's not great. It's not great if you look at what he's done recently. He's only beaten quarterbacks that don't even play in the NFL anymore. So that being said, I do think that he is a good coach. He's just not a great coach. And people will argue that. They'll argue back with you and say, well, your coach doesn't want a Super Bowl or this, that, and the other. Well, I don't know, man. I would have expected him to win a little bit more than what he has. But then at the same time, it's hard to win the NFL. So it's hard. I would say that I agree with you guys, though. He gets a very long leash, especially here recently.
He has cool quotes to the media, though.
He does.
That's great.
Love
cool
that.
Quotes in 9 and 8 seasons. That's what it takes to be an all-time coach, Kenner.
And doesn't blink.
That's right.
Just stares at you really intensely, drinks a lot of Red Bull, motivational quotes, and leader of men. There you go. All right, that wraps it up on the radio side. Hey, for our radio listeners, Chatterbox Reds trade deadline special with Nick Kirby from 2 to 6 o'clock, right? Nick is 2 to 6 o'clock. Follow Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Go give them a follow. 2 to 6 p.m., 2 in the afternoon to 6 o'clock tonight, the trade deadline special. Nick Kirby does a fantastic job talking all things Reds, Major League Baseball, all of it. Make sure you give the Chatterbox Sports a follow on YouTube and tune in. The Reds made a couple big moves already, and some are anticipating maybe more, but not just Reds moves, but moves around Major League Baseball and how that impacts the Reds, the Central, the National League, the World Series picture, all of that. 2 p.m., 6 p.m., Chatterbox Sports with Nick Kirby, the trade special, so make sure you tune in for that. All right, that wraps it up for us on radio. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Here we go.
All right, 11:47.
Here we go.
And now we stall. And now we just fill time.
We could sing the Steelers fight song the rest of the
I
time.
hate the Steelers so much, but it's such
so
a good song.
What is it?
Here we go.
Steelers. Here we go.
Here we
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl.
Here we go.
Steelers. Here we go. You don't know it?
Why do you know that?
Such a banger.
I have a friend who's a Steelers fan.
I just listen to Pat
Coach
McAfee so much, and they
Tomlin
sing it
is
all the time.
ready to win. With Johnson, Juju, Claypool, and Ben. Here we go.
It's quite a flex.
It's a
that
banger.
song.
It's a very good song.
Jimmy, we could do so many clips of him just
He
singing.
has so many songs in that noggin of his.
It's like insane. I mean, the
Round
NBA,
Ball Rock to Here We Go. in
Which,
under
by
a
the way,
week.
that slapped on the Olympics over the weekend.
Oh, so good.
That was so cool. Dwayne Wade, do you like him in the analyst role? I love Dwayne Wade.
You know his pronouns. That's he, him.
Yeah.
Crazy call.
Yeah, I saw.
Not just
Crazy
once,
call.
but he had to make sure he did it 2 or 3 times just
Yeah.
to kind of let people know,
No, that was an unbelievable call. I like having guys in the booth. I think it's fun. I'm not really watching the Olympics for play-by-play analysis. I thought it was cool. Dwayne Wade kept saying "we" when announcing the U.S., and he told the guy he was with in the booth, he was like, "Oh, you got to remind me not to say we. I played for this team for a long time."
You're in Paris.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I thought Dwayne Wade was cool. I thought it was a good job.
How about what I got annoyed with? I'm not like, could you have found a way to play him? Yes, but like, we're talking about grown, multi-millionaire dudes playing a kid sport, right? Love basketball, love the NBA, love watching the Olympics when it comes to basketball especially. But like, I got really nauseated seeing all the social media posts and all the shows freaking out because Jason Tatum didn't play. I'm like, this isn't the YMCA where every kid's going to get a chance to play. I mean, my gosh, we're taught in high school that not everyone's going to get a fair, middle school, that not everyone's going to get equal playing time, this, that, and the other. And here's the deal, whether you like Steve Kerr or not, because I know politics, drive people away from him, okay? When he gave the explanation of the fact that Serbia, they have all posts and all guards. There's no in between. They're really, it didn't fit his style of play. I mean, if you want to be mad about Joel Embiid starting, I'm all for getting mad about Joel Embiid starting. I'm fine with getting mad at that, right? Like, the depth on this team is absolutely insane. I thought they looked lazy early on. They were doing some lazy passes. You can get away with that in the NBA. You're not going to get away with that. Once they cleaned that up, they dominated. Kevin Durant, LeBron, fantastic, all this. But to me, the big takeaway was nobody should be upset. Halliburton was the other one that didn't get playing time, this, that. It's all going to be matchup based. I'm defending Steve Kerr in this. He didn't need to play those two. There wasn't a matchup that called for it. Now, if he doesn't play a second of the entire Olympics, then you can sit there and say, well, what the hell was the purpose? I don't think that'll be the case. I just thought nothing was made into something when it came to that, when it was all said and done.
Yeah, and people keep pointing to, we've never seen a top, whatever you call Tatum in the league, a top whatever player benched in the Olympics. Well, you need to build a team. You can't just put the best players out there. Drew Holiday is starting for a reason, and it's because he's the best defender on the team. Derek White is getting a ton of minutes for a reason, and it's because he's a role player who can shoot and play defense and rebound. You can't just have ball-dominant scorers out there. I was shocked that Devin Booker got as many minutes as he did. I think if you're going down the list of that roster and you're going pure iso ball wing scores.
Did he start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just because KD's still working back, and KD will certainly be the starter. Right.
That was insane.
Right. Oh, he's unbelievable. But I would expect Devin Booker's minutes to decrease as well as long as KD keeps coming back. I think if you're looking at ball-dominant scorers on the team, you want the ball running through LeBron and KD and Steph Curry bringing it up. And I think Drew's going to provide a great role defensively for the team. I think we're going to see a lot more of Halliburton when you play more teams because he's such a great passer, and you don't see a lot of that on this roster. It's a lot of scores, like I said before. I think the biggest issue that you touched on there was Embiid. I mean, his play style just doesn't mesh whatsoever with FIBA. They don't let you foul bait. They don't call the ticky-tack fouls. They don't send you to the free throw line. There's been so many clips already in the exhibition games and in that first game against Serbia of refs just looking at him while he's laying on the ground. They're like, what do you want me to do? That's not a foul in FIBA basketball. So I think there's an easy answer for Embiid at center. I think it's you start Anthony Davis and you go a little bit smaller and you bring Embiid off the bench. I think they were also looking to run the ball through him too much. It seemed like every possession with that opening group, they were throwing it down to the post with Joel Embiid when you have Steph Curry and LeBron James and Devin Booker and all these other guys on the floor. I don't think you should run a big man offense. I get they were trying to take Jokic out of the game, but we'll see how this progresses with this team as we go. This is, in my opinion, the most talented roster we've ever seen in the Olympics. I think it's better than 92's roster if you just go straight down. So we'll see how they mesh. They'll continue to get better. I think that Serbia game was probably their biggest test of group play.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, right off the bat, damn, just being thrown to the wolves. Well, wolves, but
Wolf in Jokic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how they play against teams with a little bit better rosters, but it doesn't get much better than Serbia. So, that Canada game obviously circled whenever that comes around with SGA and a lot of the NBA players on that roster. But with that game, I'm pretty confident that the U.S. is going to cruise to this gold medal. It doesn't get like a much worse matchup for us than Jokic and Serbia.
What I did notice too, and look, people rip the NBA today. They don't play defense. They don't do that. Like, it's not like they're playing defense as intense as what they were back in the day. The offensive skill set is significantly better than it was back in the day too, so let's not ignore that. But you could tell early on, they were a little lazy. They were standing straight up. They weren't in stances, but they were a little lazy with the passes. It was leading to turnovers. Like, luckily that game, that light switch kind of flipped on, and all of a sudden you started seeing everyone just kind of slapping the floor, playing really good fundamental defense. They got better on their passes. I get so tired of those one-hand little lob passes inside. Those got picked off so many times. They got crisper as that game went on, obviously riding off the momentum of Kevin Durant. And then LeBron, 40 freaking years old, or is going to be 40 years old. He's 39 years old. And people talking about, they need to restrict his minutes. There was a talk when the Olympics started, does he come off the bench? Shut up. That's a silly question. Look at him. He is the best player in the world.
Yeah.
And we don't need to do the lazy MJ LeBron debate, but if we were, there's a lot of points that we, again, would agree on. I don't know how you could look at him at 39 years old and just not know that this is the best player in the history of basketball. I don't care. I'm going to go out on a bad note with some of these people, I'm sure, with that. But, is what it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, for the last, 3 years or so, people have been saying LeBron's not a top 5, maybe not a top 10 player in the league. then you combine all the best players in the league on one team, and it comes down to crunch time, and they all just play hot potato with the basketball until they get it to LeBron, and he takes over. I think that's kind of put all that to bed. I've always said for forever that LeBron's biggest enemy is LeBron. They always grade him against himself and not against the league. I think if you look at how LeBron compares to the rest of the league, obviously he's not as good as he was when he was 18 or when he was 21 or when he, in 2018 when he carried the Cavs team with a terrible roster to the finals, in which what I think was the best single season of basketball I've ever seen. But, he gets compared to that, and he's obviously not at that level anymore at 39, but he's still a top 5 player in the league. When he was in his prime, whatever you want to call whatever 15 years you want to pick as his prime, he was so distantly ahead of number 2 in the league that now that he's fallen back to the pack a little bit, people think he's fallen down the rankings, and it's just not the case. He's still a top 2, top 3 player in the league, certainly top 5, and he's proving it during the Olympics. It's so great to see. I don't know how much more of peak LeBron we have left to watch, so I'm going to get up early. I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to watch every game of this Olympics because it's so great to see, and I'm just going to soak it in while we have it.
I like it. We only have a couple minutes left. How about this? I found this very fascinating, actually. We have to find any positive Reds talking point that we can. Anytime I can find something that says that the Reds are best at something, we have to dive into it. Did you know that? So Brooksgate put out this little graphic here. The best and worst team in every inning this season.
Ooh.
The Cincinnati Reds, ladies and gentlemen, we thought we were having a down year. No, we're having a very positive year. The Cincinnati Reds are the best second-inning team in baseball as far as run differential is concerned.
Wow.
No team has scored more runs in the second inning than the Cincinnati Reds. The run differential, they are plus 20 in the second inning. Absolutely obliterating teams in the second
Incredible.
inning.
So Reds second inning money line is what I'm hearing.
I saw a graphic from that same company the other day that the Reds are distantly the leader in middle four-seam fastball OPS.
Nailed it.
So if we could only get middle fastballs in the second inning, this team might win a World Series in game ones of series against playoff teams.
Yes, and you could only win if you won game 1.
Right, of course.
So the Dodgers are the best extra inning team in baseball. They are plus 10 run differential in extra innings.
Checks out.
I mean, yeah.
Well, that's just one game.
That's what-
They scored. I think they scored 8 runs in the
Yeah.
top of the 10th in one game.
They did.
How about the Phillies? The Phillies, they have outscored their opponents. They're plus 41 run differential in the first inning.
Wow.
That's actually, plus 20 for the Reds in the second is, I guess, but you keep going. The Royals are plus 39 in the sixth. Houston's plus 49. That's pretty interesting nonetheless. How about the A's they're minus 33 in the first inning. Not good.
Minus 33.
The White Sox are minus 40 in the second.
Wow, if we got a second inning, 9 second innings of the Reds versus the White Sox, that'd be a pretty crazy game.
Cardinals minus 46 in the 5th, and Rangers minus 46 in the 7th. That's bad.
What am I supposed to do with these numbers?
Don't know.
Well, do something with it. We got 3 more minutes left, dude. No, I'm just joking, but nonetheless. All right, trade deadline coming up later on tonight, 6 o'clock. Nick Kirby, Chatterbox Reds, trade deadline special, 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Obviously, Frankie Montas, the Reds move on from yesterday. They make a couple moves yesterday, of course. I was starting to get irritated with the Reds for one. Shame on me. I thought yesterday was the trade deadline. I'm like refreshing the phone. I'm out on the golf course. I'm refreshing the phone. Like, okay, did the Reds do anything? Did the Reds do anything? Well, it's tonight, and it's not 4 o'clock. I have no clue where I got 4 o'clock from. I have no clue where I got the 28th from, or the 29th, or I don't even know what day it is. But bottom line, 6 o'clock tonight's the deadline. The Reds have already made a couple moves as far as that's concerned. The Brewers acquired Frankie Montas from the Reds, and then the Reds also acquired Ty France from the Seattle Mariners. Again, Frankie Montas, the big move for the Cincinnati Reds. They get him in the offseason last year. They paid him a good chunk of change. Opening day starter. Didn't go as anticipated. They were still able to get something in return. Frankie Montas, that the biggest name the Reds are moving on from, or is Jonathan India? Have we seen the last of Jonathan India as a Red?
I'm holding my breath. I'm really, really hoping they move on for Jonathan India, obviously for the right price. I'm not trading him for potato chips, but I'm really hoping that call comes, that they get the value that I think they can get for Jonathan India. I'm also hoping that they trade one of the bigger name pitchers, whether that's Alexis Diaz or whatever the return might be for Fernando Cruz. I'm also pro picking up the phone on Andrew Abbott and calling around. So I'm really hoping that there's a bigger name that gets traded this deadline. I hope this team sells. I think it's the best thing for them to sell everything you got right now.
Yep. I feel like you have to trade him. I feel like his value is about as high as it might ever be. and I think that there's definitely a contending team out there that would pay up for him.
Elliot's in the chat. He's snapping people.
He is.
People being disrespectful. And I thought I made up with some people. I'm still catching some strays here. Steelers suck, guys. Am I right?
There you go.
Hey, Mike Tomlin, leader of men. What a joke. Am I right? We're done. Thank you, everyone. Again, 2 o'clock with Nick Kirby. Reds, Chatterbox Reds trade special from 2 to 6 o'clock. Make sure you're tuning in there. Any other housekeeping notes before we close out? You guys are at the Reds game tonight.
Reds game tonight. Discord link is pinned to the top of the chat from Casey earlier in the show. Make sure you join that. We'll send everything in there about where we're meeting, where we're sitting.
Yes.
We'll try to get down there early, meet up before the game, and then we'll figure out something inside. If we can't find somewhere to sit together, we'll figure out somewhere to meet. So should be fun. If you're in town, if you're close to town, get down to the ballpark tonight. Make sure you say what's up. It'd be nice to put faces with names.
Yeah, me and Everett Henry, we're gonna go have a beer. We're gonna hang out, talk sports. Just a couple dudes being dudes, just best friends being best friends, man.
That's right.
Actually, Everett, I'm not joking. I would buy you a beer. I always buy the people that hate me the most. I always try to win their support by buying them some
Look
alcohol.
at that.
That's how I got married.
No.
Just keep her drunk. See, I'm not that bad.
Whoa!
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Till tomorrow. It's been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Peace.